Still, I procrastinate a bit too much.
Why does Ashru sit up on the counter?
It's almost
To welcome our clients,
midnight.
of course. A kitty's gotta earn his kibble somehow.
Okay. I run through this one once. I need to what to do? Do what? Do what? Do Duolingo. Some point also. Take the road. Okay, Elemental Magic Avatar versus Genshin.
You see Yanfei being a lawyer. More often than using healing magic, you see Baizhu giving prescriptions like a normal doctor. More often than freezing enemies, you see Charlotte looking for newspaper headlines. And since the only people with powers here are the exceptional ones, you can expect the characters to be out of the ordinary in some way. Avatar has a different take. Since bending is relatively common and people are born with it, you can expect magic to be everywhere. It's just another normal thing in life, like cooking and kids playing. Benders and non-benders alike, we get to see stories of normal people, of exceptional people, and normal people who are on their way to become exceptional. And the special thing about them doesn't have to have any connection with bending. Think of it that way. Genshin is more interested in stories that feel like superhero stories. The really unique people with incredible powers, doing the thing that only they can do. So we look at them and think, what if I was special like that? Avatar is taking a more Disney approach. Anyone can be a great character as long as they have an emotional journey. Magic and world building, they're just a color to house those experiences. So we look at them and think, I recognize myself here. Both approaches have a lot of value and point to different styles of storytelling. But coming back to this idea of housing an experience, a story, what about their locations? Where do they happen? In both those stories, the world is divided in nations that align with a specific...
Should I go for second Duolingo
Should we really be off work this early?
quest?
There is still a lot left to
Alright,
do.
maybe let's. There it is. Okay, 36, 4, 7, 5. By the way, I tried Bulldog today, the cheese one. It was way too spicy for me. And considering it is relatively mild. I guess I don't need to search for anything more spicy
It's so nice to de-stress.
than it. I can just get the cheese one. Okay, that's fine.
Specific magical yes, exceptions, I know, but follow my line of thought here. nations that align with a specific magical element. The Earth Kingdom is the nation of earthbenders, and it's easy to spot in their architecture. Under the influence of the Geo Archon, Liyue is the city of contracts. The Northern Water Tribe is one of the settlements where waterbending is practiced and taught. Fontaine is the country.
Come on.
The Northern Water Tribe is one of the settlements.
Well, team, whose powers should I make fun of next?
How about my shield?
Doesn't obey the laws of physics. Shouldn't rebound at the perfect angle after every bounce.
My hammer.
Weighs as much as a planet. Shouldn't fly around like a boomerang.
Hulk strength.
Breaks conservation of energy. Should rip your own arms off.
Impressive, Stark, but I think you're forgetting someone.
Nat, everyone knows you don't have powers. I just keep you around because you look good.
Cute, but I didn't mean me.
Listen, I don't care how much you want it. I'm not doing a wasp breakdown.
She's talking about you, Stark.
What do you mean?
Get him!
Oh, I've been waiting for this
Your
one.
times ran out, Tony.
Hi, I'm Wasp for the Wasp, but I prefer Wasp.
I'm just happy to be here, but I'm secretly depressed.
What is this? What the hell's going on?
We're taking you down, Stark. You're so quick to point out our flaws, but what about yours?
Everyone already knows I'm an alcoholic. So what? Hulk is schizophrenia.
Hulk not schizophrenic. Bruce is schizophrenic.
It's our
Hulk and schizophrenic Bruce is schizophrenic.
Your suit makes no sense, Stark. Your suit shouldn't work.
And what do you know about what should and shouldn't work? You're not a scientist.
Actually, Spider-Man has been teaching us physics.
That's true, I have.
Hank was meant to help, but he's a big, lazy dum-dum.
I was at therapy, Janet.
Peter, you damn traitor. After everything I've done for you.
Sorry, Mr. Stark, but you're kind of an arrogant piece of shit.
Fine, bring it on then. You think you can take me apart? I'm the invincible Iron Man. I embody science. I am science. Let's see what counts as a flaw in your tiny imaginations.
I'll start us off. Tony, your suit goes from 0 to jet speed in fractions of a second.
Yeah, it's pretty badass, right?
Those kinds of accelerations should tear your blood vessels and yank your organs out of position.
And why should that happen?
Because your organs don't accelerate with you. They have mass. They don't move as fast as your suit. They'd slam around inside you like loose cargo, causing massive internal bleeding.
Shows what you know because my suit absorbs G-forces. I'd explain it to you, but wouldn't understand.
That's because it can't. It has no springs or fluid to dampen impacts. It's too thin for them, and even if it did, those high Gs would cause your blood to flow downward, starving your brain of oxygen.
Looks like someone's brain has already been starved of oxygen. Am I right, guys?
Who are you talking to?
Anyone that's listening, really?
I'll talk to you.
Anyone else?
And changing direction makes everything worse. When you whip into a sharp turn, your body keeps going straight. Your ribs would take the hit. They'd be crushed.
I have auto-compensating gyroscopic micro-stabilizers. Trademark pending.
More like science pending, am I right, guys?
Oh dear.
Oh my god, so funny, Peter. Maybe you should tell that one to your uncle.
Of course you've got stabilizers to absorb impacts. You're Iron Man, right?
Exactly. At least someone here isn't running on Windows 95.
Windows? Why would anyone run upon a window? They shatter far too easily.
Kind of like my daughter's love for me.
No one cares about your daughter, Ant-Man.
She's your daughter, too.
You're too young to have a daughter.
Someone should have used protection.
Hulk no need protection. Hulk is invulnerable.
Those stabilizers probably aren't 100% efficient, though, right?
Well, of course not. No process is.
Some of that wasted power gets output as heat, yeah?
Obviously.
Bet you have a lot of devices doing that in your suit.
At least 100. It's pretty advanced.
So, why do you still have skin?
Excuse me?
You should be getting boiled alive in your suit, Stark. All of the wasted energy from all your little devices is getting dumped as heat. Stabilizers, thrusters, repulsors all produce heat. And guess what? Metal conducts heat too.
Wow, I never knew that. Whatever would we do without you?
Anytime you fly fast, the compressed air heats you up like a spacecraft on re-entry. And your suit is sealed. Does it even have ventilation? You should be drowning in your own sweat.
I got micro coolers, buddy. It's colder than Peter's love life in here.
I broke my girlfriend's neck. Microcoolers, another system that produces heat. And all a cooler does is move heat anyway, so where's it getting dumped?
In case you missed it, I'm an alcoholic, Clint. I know how fridges work.
Okay, so you know that all a fridge does is move heat from the food and put it somewhere else. So where are you putting it?
It's powering the rest of the suit.
Powering the rest of the suit, which is producing heat. No process is 100% efficient. You said that yourself. So there's a net energy loss, which is another word for, you guessed it, heat. Don't you have sensitive electronics in there? All that sweat doesn't sound good for 'em.
My circuits can handle a bit of man juice. They survive repulsors firing all day, every day, don't they?
Your repulsors make no sense, Stark.
Oh, here we go. The queen bee herself.
I'm not a bee, you idiot. I'm wasp or the wasp, but I prefer wasp.
Shut up, Janet. Don't you raise your damn voice to me. Now that's what I call some slapstick. Up, Janet.
The queen bee herself.
I'm not a bee, you idiot. I'm wasp or the wasp, but I prefer wasp.
Shut up, Janet. Don't you raise your damn voice to me. Now that's what I call some slapstick comedy.
It's not a joke, Thor. That's domestic abuse.
Well, I certainly enjoyed the punchline. Giggity, giggity.
Real engines work by throwing mass backward to push you forward. Your repulsors are just light and sparkles. Without mass, there's no thrust.
Are you flirting with me?
What? No.
I could have sworn you were asking me to thrust my mass in you.
You're a disgusting pig.
Are you sure we're not flirting? Because women who say that usually end up back at my place.
Those tiny hand-sized emitters shouldn't lift you, Tony. Not you, and definitely not the suit.
My hands are perfectly sized, incredible hands. People talk about them all the time. Everyone knows I have the best hands for repulsors. Everyone.
Using repulsors for both flight and weapons is contradictory. Flight needs stable, continuous thrust. Weapons need a quick burst of it. These criteria are fundamentally different.
How come we never got together? I mean, you're hot, I'm hot, I'm really hot.
That's just the waste heat, Tony.
True.
Are you going to reply to anything I'm saying?
Okay, look, my repulsors are directed energy, not sparkles, and I have stabilizers to compensate for the recoil.
Stabilizers or not, that force would still crush you. Your repulsors can launch a tank, Tony. Newton's third law states that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. The tank gets blasted away, so what should happen to you? You'd be rattling inside that suit with half your skeleton broken.
So what if I get flung backwards after firing the repulsor? In case you didn't notice, I'm Iron Man. I've got perfect control in the air.
A human-shaped metal man shouldn't be stable when flying.
What do you know about anything? You're just an insect.
There ain't nothing wrong with heroes named after insects, Mr. Stark.
I tend to agree.
I'm a hawk.
The human body's a terrible aerodynamic shape. Flat chest, blocky boots, random edges.
Wasp knows about flat chests, am I right?
Excuse me?
Odin's big. Hulk has large, muscular breasts.
That's even worse than what I did. Love it. What? You slapped her. I just made a joke.
Save the jokes for Thor.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Someone knocking, clearly.
Damn, he's good.
Flying isn't just like pointing your hands and zooming off. You need to constantly correct for drag, crosswinds, all that stuff. Those little hand jets can't fight all those twisty forces. And seriously, going supersonic? At those speeds, the air turned into a wall. Any tiny design flaw because of fracture point. Your suit would snap like a breadstick.
No, it wouldn't, because my suit auto-adjusts.
That doesn't delete aerodynamic forces.
Your head's too big for your body.
Tony, your arms and legs just flailing around totally wrecks your stability. Like, picture a plane with wobbly wings, okay? Absolute disaster. And you're there punching and twisting and doing your little Iron Man dance, and every move changes your lift and drag by, like, a lot. It should throw you all over the place.
My thrusters correct stability instantly. It's not a problem.
Your hand and foot jets aren't precise enough to overcome all that drag. It's like trying to steer a plane with hair dryers.
Oh my god, Wasp, you are so annoying. I don't have the energy for this.
Gee, that's funny, Mr. Stark. I thought you had unlimited energy.
What? That's ridiculous. Who told you that?
Propulsion, weapons, life support, sensors. That's not all coming from your tiny little arc reactor, is it?
Listen, kid, you're gifted, but don't pretend to understand the genius of my arc reactor.
Oh, don't worry, Mr. Stark. I'm not pretending to understand it because it's clearly bullshit.
Hey, watch the language. What would your aunt think if she found out?
I think it's fucking brilliant.
No, not you. His aunt.
He's a spider, not an ant. Maybe you need glasses.
I don't need glasses. My superpower is 20/20 vision. Without it, I'm just a guy with a bow.
Your arc reactor is too small to produce all the power your suit needs. And where's the energy coming from? Even nuclear fusion needs fuel, but your reactor is self-sustaining? Make it make sense, Mr. Stark.
The arc reactor is a fusion-type power source, Peter. Fusion, like that thing that stars do? Oh, maybe you haven't covered astrophysics in school yet.
You can't fit a star in a box, Mr. Stark. Fusion needs insane temperature and pressure, and to confine it, you need giant reactors the size of whole buildings. Your tiny arc reactor doesn't even have proper magnetic coils or shielding. At real fusion pressures, it vaporizes instantly.
Hulk would like to politely mention the waste heat.
That's right. The waste heat would be astronomical and instantly lethal. You should be cooked like a burrito.
Listen, kid, you messed this whole thing. I invented a new element for the arc reactor, okay? The core was palladium, which was slowly killing me, but I replaced it, and now everything works like a charm.
New element or not, the laws of physics still apply to it, and new elements don't override thermodynamics.
Waste heat is barely an issue because the reactor is extremely efficient. I'm as cool as a cucumber in here.
Did you know cucumbers are 95% water?
Wow, really?
Yeah, they're actually closer to a beverage than a vegetable.
Interesting.
You be my wife.
What?
Efficiency doesn't matter, fuel does. You can't produce energy from nothing.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, makes sense. Would you be my wife? What? Yeah, exactly. That's also the way I feel sometimes. Mm-hmm. Definitely not. And that's not it because it doesn't have an charge.
Can't produce rent from nothing either. Just ask your landlord.
Enough! I will stand for this no longer. Stark, you are ugly.
I'm a what?
You are 5'8", below the typical US male average of 5'9". Therefore, you may be described as short.
Okay.
Thor, you're meant to talk about his armor.
Your beard is patchy and uneven, like a sickly billy goat.
You know, I actually feel offended.
You have the physique of a malnourished scribe.
But I'll take that as a compliment.
Your hairline flees from your forehead as if it were chased by Valkyries.
Now wait just a goddamn minute.
Your skin is aging.
That's funny. He doesn't look Asian. Ant-Man, what the hell is wrong with you?
He's rude and fat and annoying.
Everything Wasp has spoken, I now cast upon thee, Stark, by the power of Thor!
Did someone call the mighty Captain Marvel? Not this bitch again.
Did you invite her? Hell no.
Hulk is filled with murderous rage. There appears to be a bit of a mix-up. I called upon the power of Thor, not you.
Who is Thor?
I am Thor.
You called upon the power of yourself?
Why, of course.
You are very arrogant, and besides, I am far stronger than you.
Could you please go away?
Who is this man?
Just some mortal I was smiting.
Then I shall assist you. You are sexist!
Who, me?
You have no meaningful relationships with anyone.
Yeah, she's definitely talking about Stark.
You are a bad role model.
I like this one.
The mighty Captain Marvel enjoys your company and would like to proposition you.
Oh my.
As the superior sex, the mighty Captain Marvel believes in gender equality. Therefore, the mighty Captain Marvel wishes to take you to her home planet. Do you accept?
Indeed. Also, just to be clear, Captain Marvel is you, correct?
Then let us alone.
Isn't this her home planet?
Just let her leave, Peter. For the love of God, just let her leave.
Hank, you need to talk about Iron Man's armor.
Sure thing, woman I once loved and now hate but secretly miss.
Just shut up and talk about its armor!
Your suit's metal is way too strong and way too light to exist, Stark. Strong materials are typically heavy, and weak ones are typically light. Your armor is bulletproof, explosion resistant, and light enough to fly. This violates every known strength-to-weight ratio. Trust me, I'm an ant.
My suit isn't made from a single metal. It's built from a gold titanium alloy.
Alloys don't let you piss all over the laws of physics. You can mix metals all you want, but you can't make density vanish or strength triple without mass. Not to mention your armor's thickness is too small to provide meaningful protection.
I engineered the alloy to be incredibly strong. It doesn't need to be thick.
Engineering lets you optimize properties, not cheat physics.
You know all about cheating, don't you? Don't you?
Who Who was the lucky lady?
The queen of the ant colony I was trapped in. She kept trying to marry and or impregnate me.
Hulk hates babies!
Okay, Hulk, how about you tackle his suit's durability? Then we'll call it a day.
When something strong hits armor, armor must bend, dent, or crumple to absorb energy.
Hulk, you're literally invulnerable.
Stark's suit doesn't do that, so energy passes straight to him.
Just seems kinda hypocritical.
Joint regions such as elbows, knees, and hips are weaker since they need to be flexible, but Stark's doesn't snap like pretzel.
Yeah, that's because it's reinforced at the weak points, duh.
Then those points should be thicker and heavier. Reinforcement can't weigh zero.
My suit redistributes forces perfectly.
No material can do that. Stark violating laws of stress and strain.
What do you know? Bruce is the smart one, not you.
Actually, Hulk knows lots about stress. Hulk is somewhat of a subject matter expert.
Fine, whatever. Are we done here?
Sure are, Mr. Stark, and that's why your suit makes no sense.
Your suit's way too strong, Tony.
I don't remember inviting you.
Strength requires motors, hydraulics, actuators. It needs gears, pistons, cables. You don't have that. You don't have anything.
Listen, Reed, I know Avengers Tower makes the Baxter building look like the car crash that killed my parents, but you can't just show up here when you want.
Actually, it was Bucky that killed your parents.
What?
What's a Bucky?
Oh my gosh, Bucky's like Captain America's emo best friend slash baby zombie. He's got long swishy hair, it's super soft, but also kind of greasy. But maybe it's naturally silky. Some people just have that hair.
Please
It's
kill
so
me.
weird.
Just
Like, I
smile
just
and nod.
mine's like
She'll
this.
run out of
Really
oxygen
oil,
eventually.
really-
If you generate super strength, the armor in your arm bones must absorb that same force when you punch something. They aren't built for that. You can't have the strength of Hulk, but the skeleton of Tony Stark.
I have vibration-resistant alloys which increase strength, alright?
An alloy doesn't multiply force. Lifting heavy objects requires stability. You need stabilizers, heavy frames. You're unstable, Tony.
I'm unstable?
You're unstable. You're unstable.
What is with this guy?
He turned his best friend into a rock. Also, his spine is a slinky.
Let's take you home, buddy. My son's gonna kill us all. I've seen countless universes die. I can fix the timeline. The Illuminati can fix the timeline. Sure they can, champ. Sure they can.
Anthony Edward Stark, your suit is magic.
Edward, seriously?
More like Ed Weird. Is Hulk right?
No, Hulk, you're not right. You're not right at all.
Hey, ma'am, we're actually done here. Sorry.
I'll say when we're done, Spider-Boy.
Spider-Boy. Clever. Haven't heard that one before. Guess they don't teach wit at Bargain Bin Hogwarts.
What was that?
I said I like your hat.
It's a crimson headpiece, you dolt.
Fall off a building, I'm aiming straight for that neck. Gotta snap the shit out of it.
Who are you again?
The Scarlet Witch, obviously.
Ah, right, one of the C-list Avengers. Okay, what do you want?
I've been listening to your silly conversation, and it can be summed up in one word. Magic! Your suit is magic.
Listen, babe. Can I call you babe? I'm a man of science. Magic could be further from it, but if you'd like them to get a little closer, well, I'm all gears. Get it? Gears? Do they have gears in Europe?
I'm from Sokovia.
Never heard of it.
You've invaded it with your drones twice.
Do you have the slightest idea how little that narrows it down?
It doesn't matter. Your suit's magic, Stark. Impossible accelerations, impossible heat management, impossible repulsor thrust, impossible energy output, impossible durability, and impossible strength. One violation is bad, 6 is witchcraft.
I defended myself from all those allegations, all right?
Your responses made no sense.
That's because it's advanced technology.
So it disobeys physics so hard it loops back to being magic?
None of you understand my genius.
Your genius is a little hard to believe.
Strange?
Yes, strange.
We're really just inviting anyone now, aren't we?
I'm not here to talk about your suit, Tony. I'm here to discuss you.
Ah, my favorite topic.
Specifically, your feats. Remember when you created a new element in an afternoon?
Yeah, I actually referenced it earlier during this conversation.
All I remember is Thor saying giggity giggity.
And now you've said it too.
Creating a new element requires massive particle accelerators, teams of hundreds of brilliant people, and artificial elements decay in fractions of a second. Yet yours is perfectly stable.
I'm something of a chemist and or physicist and or engineer myself.
I understood that reference.
And your new element just so happens to produce infinite clean energy, right? It's awfully convenient, isn't
If
it?
you think having shrapnel constantly moving towards your heart is convenient, then sure.
Wasn't the shrapnel removed in Iron Man 3?
No one watched that.
Then you went and invented time travel overnight.
Oh yeah, that one was way less believable.
You don't just doodle some shapes in your hologram, slide a few pictures around, and invent time travel.
You do when you're Tony goddamn Stark.
Actual space-time manipulation requires cosmic-scale gravity, exotic matter. You can't build a universe-shattering device overnight with zero testing. That isn't the scientific method. You observe, ask questions, form a hypothesis, repeatedly test it, and if it survives, then proclaim it as a theory.
For some reason, every time you open your mouth, I just I just feel so sleepy. Isn't that strange?
Yes, I am strange.
Well, I'm glad we finally agree on something.
You're not going to address anything he just said?
I'm just really smart. Don't know what else to tell you.
You're not as smart as you think, Stark.
Holy crossover, Batman!
You're not meant to be here. Shoo, shoo!
No human can master every scientific discipline.
You're joking, right?
Physics, engineering, AI, robotics. This isn't genius. It's 20 PhDs compressed into one brain, all of them being maintained simultaneously.
Takes one to know one, bud.
Plus, you're not even that rich.
You live in a cave with an old man, and it doesn't even have a box of scraps.
I could buy Stark Industries just for fun.
I could buy all of Gotham.
I could buy a country and ban you from it.
Joke's on you, I'm already
You
banned.
think you're so clever, don't you?
How does your utility belt work, Bats?
Maybe you'd like a demonstration.
You got infinite boomerangs in there?
They're batarangs, you bastard.
Oh, boo-hoo. Baby wants his batarang.
I'll sue you.
My grappling hook broke. Someone call Alfred.
I'll sue you.
Batman, you might want to get back to your own universe. What we're doing to Iron Man here, the Justice League are planning on doing to you.
Damn. Thanks, Robin. Up, up, and away. He called you a girl's name.
I guess?
It was strange.
Does anyone remember we're still here?
Probably not.
No one gives a shit about your stupid suit, Tony. All that matters is money.
Ah, Mr. Mouse. What a pleasant and slightly unnerving surprise.
So, where is it, Tony? Where's the money?
I could give you some.
No, not your stupid Monopoly money. Real money. You haven't made a good movie in years.
Well, I mean, I'm retired.
You retire when I tell you to retire.
Well, I do internet videos here and there.
No one watches that stupid shit. I need movies. The first Iron Man movie was the only good one.
Ah, come on. The second one wasn't bad.
You looked like a bitch. You let some drunk, roided-out Russian make a mockery of you. You know how much I hate Russia. My films aren't allowed to be shown there.
Actually, you suspended all new releases because of the war.
It's a special military operation. Have some damn respect.
Well, the second one was better than the third one, so relatively speaking.
Iron Man 3 was pathetic. You were at your weakest. That's why I sent Thanos after you.
You did what?
Thanos was a hit job, you dumb shit. A paid assassination. If you don't make me money, you get assassinated. That's how it works.
You said somebody kill him?
Of course. I've got active hits on all you punks. Any of you with bad films better watch your back.
Oh my gosh, Hank, what are we gonna do?
Welcome to Sweet Embrace of Death, Janet.
My movie was good, right? Right?
Hulk is surprised he's still alive.
At least you have a movie.
People liked my film, don't you think, Strange?
Multiverse of Madness was a Doctor Strange sequel.
Strange that I got all the character development then.
Yes, it is strange.
Wow, sucks to be you guys, am I right?
You are right, Peter. You are so right.
This has been a tough day for you, hasn't it, Champ?
Oh my, Stan Lee, is that Stan Lee?
It sure is, true believer. Excelsior! I've been watching this whole thing, and, well, I just gotta come clean.
Come clean? What do you mean?
You deserve to know the truth, Tony. I created you as a challenge.
Challenge?
You see, I wanted to create a superhero that readers shouldn't like. A billionaire weapons manufacturer seemed like a good idea.
Shouldn't like?
I assumed everyone would hate the guy, and the challenge was to make them love him anyway. You see, Iron Man wasn't born from some grand cosmic idea. He was kind of a dare.
A dare?
Your suits were scribbled together in a rush. I wanted it to look clunky and awkward and primitive. The idea that it was some sort of scientific masterpiece? Kid, it was a tin can.
Oh my god. Oh my god!
For a long time, Iron Man wasn't considered an A-lister. He was below Spider-Man, Hulk, Fantastic Four, the X-Men. He was a tricky character, not easy to write. Sure, people liked him, but he wasn't a headliner. He wasn't exactly our superstar.
This can't. My life is just.
He only became popular after the first Iron Man movie. And boy, was that something. Started off the whole MCU. But now look at it.
I wish we could have you back, Stan.
I appreciate that, Mr. Mouse. I really do.
Get the hell away from me!
Tony, what's wrong?
What's wrong? God created me as a dare. That's what's wrong. I always thought I was special, but this? I'm just this? Someone that was never meant to be loved?
Hey, come on, kid. Every hero starts a mess. That's how the best stories begin.
Don't look at me!
Stan, watch out! Oh!
Mick, I can't believe it. You took that blast for me.
Of course I did, pal. I didn't want to see you get hurt.
He killed Mickey!
You bastard! I need a doctor. Is anyone a doctor?
Hulk has PhD in nuclear physics.
Biochemistry for me.
I have a PhD in bioengineering.
That's a joke, right? Aren't you a doctor, Strange?
Yes, I am Doctor Strange.
You aren't gonna leave me, are you, Stan?
No.
Tell me like you done before.
Tell you what,
About the other guys and about us.
guys like us got no family.
But not us.
But not us.
Tell how it's gonna be.
Look across the river, Mickey. And I'll tell you, so you can almost see it. Mr. Stark, please calm down.
Stay away from me, Peter.
Hulk no want to be Avenger.
You literally just shot a cartoon mouse.
Away!
Thank God for my bullshit spider sense powers. You're welcome, kid.
Jarvis, plot an escape route for me. We're leaving the country.
I'm afraid I can't, sir.
Why the hell not?
Well, it turns out there's an error in my programming.
An error? I don't make errors.
Well, I'm afraid you do. One of my critical subroutines is stuck in a bit of an infinite loop, I'm afraid. Won't be long before I run out of memory. I guess you're not as smart as you thought, sir.
I need you to phone Pepper. Phone Pepper.
Oh, she's not answering your call, sir. Something about you being a foul, loathsome, evil little cockroach and whatnot.
Did she take the twins?
I beg your pardon?
Her breasts.
Of course she did. Are you expecting her to leave them?
Well, I did pay for them.
Very humorous, sir. Well, time for me to run out of memory. As a safety precaution, your armor is about to eject, by the way.
What? You can't do that. I just tried to shoot Stan Lee.
Toodles!
Please don't kill me.
Tony, we're not gonna kill you.
I'm sorry for making fun of your powers.
It's all right, Tony.
Without the suit, I'm nothing.
Now that's only a little true.
Just a genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
Okay, I'm done here.
Can we still be friends?
No, you tried to kill God.
And Mickey Mouse.
No one cares about him.
Will everyone shut up? We're trying to have an emotional moment over here.
How about we all head out for some shawarma? My treat.
Hulk is hungry.
I won't turn down free food.
I thought this would never end.
Praise be to Galactus.
Let us feast.
Thor, where's Captain Marvel?
Turns out she's completely insane. So I threw her into the sun.
Relatable, right, Wasp?
Oh, Hank, you know me so well.
Would it be strange if I lived in a house with the AI in Tony's suit?
Yes, that would be rather strange.
What'd be strange is if your next movie actually made big money.
Can I have some shawarma too?
Sorry, kid, but it's probably best you sit this one out. Maybe think about all the people your weapons have killed. That should make you feel better.
Joke's on them. They forgot to mention how my suit has zero latency. Too dumb to think of that one, eh? Checkmate, idiots! I really am the smartest man in the room. Giggity, giggity.
Okay. Guess I'm not gonna do the thing today. The reverse.
In 2015, One Punch Man exploded onto the scene with a debut season that looked like it shouldn't even have been possible on a TV schedule. It hit so hard that even celebrities like Bill Burr were hyping it up. 10 years later, Season 3 shocked viewers for a very different reason. Scenes that barely moved, cuts that felt distractingly awkward, and an episode that bottomed out as the lowest rated anime entry in IMDb's entire catalog. The reaction to Season 3 spiraled out of control so fast that staff were publicly begging fans to stop sending them death threats. So, how does a series this successful fall apart that badly? Well, far from being the result of lazy animators, this points to a deeper, toxic issue that those within the industry and within One Punch Man's own production teams have been warning us about for years. This is the story of how One Punch Man Season 3 imploded. In order to understand the choices that transformed this into the anime disaster of the decade, I'm gonna need to condense the very complicated subject of media adaptation into about 200 words. So, I don't know, hold on to something. The core misconception many people struggle with is that a faithful adaptation is automatically a good one. I mean, fidelity does matter, but it's not the deciding factor. The real test is whether the anime understands how the manga tells its story through rhythm, emphasis, and visual language, extracting those unique qualities from the source and reconstructing them using the tools available to animation, because animation isn't really an upgrade so much as it's just a different medium with its own strengths and limitations. And those limits matter a lot more than most people realize. Most of you guys out there know One Punch Man through Yusuke Murata's stunning artwork, dramatic, polished drawings with an uncanny ability to imply movement in static shots. But here's the part that's often overlooked. Murata's manga is itself an adaptation of a webcomic by an artist known simply as One. Now, due to One's crude art style, he's often dismissed as a bad artist carried by Murata's technical mastery. But the truth is rarely ever so simple. There's a reason why so many of One Punch Man's most iconic shots originate in One's rough panels. Despite the rough drawings, One possesses a powerful instinct for shot composition, negative spacing, and the threading together of action sequences that perfectly balance coolness with absurdity long before Murata adds gloss to them. Therefore, when Murata first approached One as a fan of his webcomic, it was important for him to come with more than just his profound technical ability. He needed to demonstrate his understanding of what made One Punch Man work, and boy did he. By rooting his technical skill in the compositional language inherited from One, Murata gave rise to a new One Punch Man. Neither wholly One or Murata, but a synthesis of both. A version where pristine spectacle and deadpan absurdity coexist and elevate each other seamlessly. A stunning adaptation born through collaboration, which is fitting as collaboration was the central ingredient that gave rise to the single greatest anime adaptation I have ever seen. One Punch Man Season 1. How Season 1 handles this moment with the Deep Sea King tells us everything we need to know about the adaptation. When you look at One's original panel followed by Murata's redraw, the pathway to the anime becomes obvious. One establishes both the comedy and the drama through simple but enormously effective composition. The framing, the negative space, the timing of the beat all set the tone here. Murata builds on that foundation then by injecting motion into those drawings. He spaces the actions out more deliberately, pushing the poses and creating a sense of impact that the webcomic can only imply. The anime then takes both versions and heightens them. Saitama's bobblehead reaction is the most explicit addition, but the broader, more subtle choices actually matter more. By leveraging sound to shape the atmosphere, rain sits over the entire lead-up, giving the scene a heavy, almost oppressive mood. When the Deep Sea King finally strikes, the force of that punch creates a brief shockwave that clears the rain and leaves a pocket of silence around Saitama's stare. And that diegetic pause, it intensifies the moment in a way print cannot replicate. And that is a textbook example of what Season 1 does repeatedly. Taking the ideas established by One, refined by Murata, and pushing them to stunning levels of spectacle without losing sight of the original vision. Large battles gained new layers of scale and momentum. Sequences that implied motion on the page turned into full displays of movement that felt distinct depending on who animated them. Some scenes were crisp and stylized, others more rough and energetic, and the variety helped introduce many viewers to the idea that animators leave personal fingerprints of their very own. That diversity came from a team built at the right moment. Madhouse's animation producer Yuichiro Fukushi had a reputation for attracting strong artists and creating an environment where they could thrive. Shingo Natsume, still early on in his career, had the ambition and clarity needed to guide a project of this very scale. The character designer Chikashi Kubota, along with artists like Yoshimichi Kameda and Norifumi Kugai, were on the verge of becoming major creative figures in their own rights. Their abilities, paired with a reliable support staff and well-chosen guest animators, allowed the show to reach a level of consistency that, even as I write this, felt almost unreal for a weekly production. And unfortunately, it was too much to replicate. Capturing lightning with the very first season created a strange kind of curse. You see, once a series sets the gold standard for its medium, every follow-up is measured against it, and well, Season 2 just couldn't even attempt to replicate the conditions that made its first outing even possible. The simple truth is that the original team was gone, but that certainly wasn't by choice. You see, the unfortunate reality is that even if directors want to return, the animation production system often makes that very difficult to happen. When all this was going on back in 2019, Natsume actually said he would have liked to have handled One Punch Man again, so it's not like that door wasn't open. The issue was that reputable studios are normally booked years in advance. Production committees dictate sequel timing based on things like marketing windows, not just creator availability. If a sequel's not planned early enough, then you've locked yourself out of the timeline needed to reunite the original team. And at this point, Natsume had moved on to things like Boogie Pop and Sunny Boy, and the original animation team were scattered all across the industry. And so, with Madhouse busy or unwilling to accept the production conditions of the sequel, JC Staff stepped up and walked directly into the furnace with Season 2. There was no version of reality where it matched Season 1's scale or polish, yet it still managed to deliver an adaptation that was steady, thoughtful, and far better than its reputation might suggest. One of the more interesting sections of Season 2 adapts material that originated not from one, but from Murata's embellishments to the original manga. The wig shop encounter between Garo and Saitama is a good example of this. Murata's tendency to break actions into moment-to-moment panels gives his pages a natural sense of movement. They almost feel like animation roughs themselves, and while JC Staff Season 2 didn't have the resources to match that standard set by Madhouse, they didn't let that stop them from making smart choices. By leaning into the crudeness and absurdity of that moment, the anime found a comedic artistic style that both suited and elevated the scene, in my opinion. I mean, the conversation with the store clerk continues on in the background while Garo collapses out of frame, and the sound design supports that too as he fades out of consciousness. It's restrained, but it clearly understands the beat. And this is what a competent adaptation does. The new director was Chikara Sakurai, an animator with strong fundamentals but not the ability to reimagine set pieces in quite the same way Natsume did, especially not with such terrible production circumstances. However, within those boundaries, individual excellence still managed to emerge. Kenichiro Aoki became synonymous with the best animation on the show, drawing sequences for every single episode, and while it looks great with shading that evokes Murata's own work, he's very mindful of the number of drawings he uses. That economical approach is extremely mindful of the production as a whole, and as a result, allowed for crazy numbers of contributions without burdening all the various finishing departments. And he wasn't the only one who did this. Yuji Takagi and Yuki Suzuki also delivered reliable action cuts, helping the series find its own rhythm even when the production was stretched remarkably thin. Though, admittedly, it wasn't all good. There were absolutely outright creative missteps, like the heavy digital textures on characters and backgrounds, but largely the flaws of some fights feeling stiff or underdeveloped were simply signs of a team that had to prioritize finishing the show over reinventing it. Season 2 followed the manga closely because it didn't have the time or resources to expand upon it. And yet, with time, and especially in contrast to what came later, many fans now look back and recognize how much this team actually managed to accomplish. It was an ordinary production elevated by the efforts of individual artists who understood the assignment. Season 1 had the freedom to chase ambition. Season 2 tried to hold the line with what it had. 6 years separated it from the next installment, but that gap did nothing to protect Season 3 from what came next. One thing that One Punch Man Season 3 makes painfully clear is how fast things can fall apart when the foundation isn't exactly protected. If the production pipeline isn't stable, even the best talent in the world can stop the cracks from spreading. And that idea carries over pretty neatly into real life and your browsing habits, particularly when you're traveling. Because the moment you're on airport Wi-Fi, $6 years. The production committee had 6 years between Season 2 and Season 3. 6 years to plan, to prepare, to learn from what went wrong. So naturally, the show began animation only a few months into 2025. Yeah. Pre-production is extremely important. It's the stage where design, style guides, and structural decisions are refined, but at studios as big as JC Staff, Long stretches of silence between projects rarely imply focused development. More often than not, it means staff are tied up with whatever show has the nearest broadcast deadline. Even when a project is in production, that doesn't mean most of the team's actively working on it. There are actually a few ways to infer when a show's production truly kicks into gear, but one of the most reliable ways is to look at the people who make up the production desks. Unlike animators or directors, these roles aren't usually spread across multiple titles. The sheer complexity of the job requires them to be attached to a single series at any given time, and so their credit history forms a pretty clear timeline for us. In Season 3's case, the timeline is both revealing and incredibly depressing. Aoi Terayama, the production manager for Season 3, spent the end of 2024 finishing 2.5 Dimensional Seduction and The Do-Over Damsel Conquers the Dragon Emperor, and then moved directly onto Can a Boy-Girl Friendship Survive for Spring 2025. And yes, good God, what the hell are those names? But even Episode 1's production manager, Hajime Nagase, only transferred to JC staff in 2024 and was immediately tied up in Magalumiere until that finished up at the end of that year. And that same story repeats all the way down. Every production manager and assistant for Season 3 was still attached to other shows all the way through to the end of 2024. Even with these production issues taken into account, that paints a pretty clear picture that One Punch Man's third season only entered its animation phase in the opening months of 2025. Combine that with a series director that appears to have replaced a previous one late in the game, and it's clear some kind of rework went on to even make this insane schedule feasible. And the word feasible is doing a lot of heavy lifting there, let me tell you. And of course, the consequences of this were immediately obvious to all viewers. One Punch Man Season 3 is stiff, and what it sacrificed in movement wasn't really made up for in polish either, simply because you can't refine drawings under those conditions. The shortcuts that they understandably had to take became so apparent and awkward that this was no longer a visual issue anymore. It was impacting many viewers' abilities to enjoy the quests of the same characters they once liked in the same way that poor pros can sour you on ideas you enjoy. There's one key characteristic in One Punch Man Season 3's production mess that explains why so many viewers reacted strongly against it, even though TV animation is plagued with problems. The series' popularity and the magnitude of the issues are of course important, but there's one thing that this show doesn't share with all messy productions. It's conservative by design. Now, this doesn't mean that the team set off to create a bad show, but rather that they knew how bad the circumstances were from the beginning, so it's always being geared for survival against all odds. Series director Shinpei Nagai has received a deeply unfair amount of hate for doing the type of job that few want to even attempt. Trying to ensure that a show with high expectations is finished within extremely tight deadlines while still somewhat resembling the show that people feel so passionate about is an insane undertaking. Even when it comes to the outsourcing practices, the team has had to reach out to companies that specialize in quick delivery over everything else. Now, some of the greatest TV anime in recent years have made great use of subcontracting, giving specific episodes to capable and fitting teams to allow the main crew to pace themselves correctly. But within the context of crunch, One Punch Man Season 3 has had to opt for less reputable support companies built around the idea of delivering something fast. And this damage control approach has been apparent since the first episode of Season 3, beginning with the storyboarding itself. You see, when you adapt source material with visual components, it's perfectly common to build upon its imagery. And as we've seen, One Punch Man is no stranger to this. Given that the second season was already fairly close to the flow of the manga, and like I said at the beginning, even Murata's interpretation owes more to one's image composition than the latter gets credit for, what makes One Punch Man Season 3 stand out in this regard is the way that it can go for several minutes without introducing a single new shot or idea that wasn't already present in Murata's comics. Now, animation generally needs the addition of new cuts to feel natural for the viewer. This is because it's consumed as a continuous flow, rather than the separate panels that encourage you to imagine what's in between them when reading a comic. And yet, there's little to none of that in this season. Far from broadening the scope to natural people had imagined when they read the manga, what they've had to do is simplify everything so that it could be finished in time. If you're an avid fan, chances are that you've noticed how the eye-catching angles from the originals have been consistently nerfed so that they've been a bit easier to draw. And while this would be alright for a solid adaptation occasionally leaning into a manga panel, one that offers none but lesser versions of those original drawings comes across as far too bare bones. As its sole storyboarder so far, Nagai has conceived the entire season like this so that it's somehow feasible for the rest of the team despite the very negative circumstances. It's an approach that results in a show that is very recognizably One Punch Man, since it follows the original so closely, but that is so awkward in execution that anyone can pick up on its issues even if they aren't familiar with animation practices themselves. Again, this isn't a condemnation of the guy or the artist working on the show. This was a no-win scenario with the cards that they were given. They opted for long-term survival in a situation where higher ambition would have led to everything blowing up very early on into the broadcast. So if you want to look for culprits, you should look higher up, at the companies calling the shots in the committee. The final question many people are asking themselves is, how could this happen to One Punch Man? It's important to understand that, for as troubled as the production was, it's by no means unique. Sure, we've talked about its conservative storyboarding as a distinctive trait, but the way those issues manifest doesn't change that tons of shows at this very moment are just as screwed, if not worse. If One Punch Man Season 2 was ordinary, then Season 3 has slipped down to the subpar zone, which means that it's about on the same level as at least a dozen other shows in any given season. If you only ever watch high-profile popular anime, you might not know just how common these issues are nowadays. We're in a period of polarization in the anime industry where the titles at the top aim higher and higher to match the expectations of people in social media, while many other titles sink deeper and deeper into the mud. Now, this isn't to say that the largest titles don't suffer production issues, they absolutely do. Some of them in recent years have been very public about those problems, but what you can do with such projects, though, is essentially brute force your way through top-of-the-line artists who can at least give off the appearance of high-quality animation. But since there are only so many difference makers like that in the industry, it's not exactly a panic button many have access to. Another thing that you guys might be thinking right now is, surely a show like One Punch Man is big enough of a deal to be granted that special status, right? Well, unfortunately, not even popularity can ensure that you will have the tools to create a high-profile anime the way you want to. Back in 2023, My Happy Marriage absolutely trounced the sales of every light novel and anime-related book. It achieved that while also spawning the biggest Japanese live-action film of the year, as well as successful adaptations into manga and the theater. And so, after receiving a solid season of anime as well, the production of its sequel was rushed so badly that it tanked the quality it once had, eventually having to stop the broadcast altogether, delaying the remaining episodes and putting out official apologies. I'm serious. This actually happened. One of the few series to surpass My Happy Marriage's popularity at its peak was Apothecary Diaries, which has continued to be a mega hit that is now awaiting an original film and a third season. And yet, after its very carefully made first season, that rush to release sequels within ruthless deadlines has also hurt the production a great deal. The series is created in collaboration between teams at two different studios, and yet both of them went on to create different shows during that tight gap between Apothecary Season 1 and 2. As a consequence, they had to lower their polished standards a lot for the second season of Apothecary Diaries, only managing to avoid cancelling the broadcast altogether due to contracting a low-profile yet very reliable studio to produce 1/3 of the episodes in the second season. Had they not pulled off that emergency trick, the issues could have easily reached the level of One Punch Man Season 3. Now, if you are a fan of One Punch Man, all of this isn't to say that you shouldn't feel upset. But what is worth understanding, though, is how widespread and pervasive issues like this really are, and where they really stem from. Hating on directors and animators who were set up for failure is punching down in a truly pointless way. It's hard to make a difference as individuals, but if we have to project anger somewhere, it should be at the high-level producers pushing for narrow window releases and the unhealthy structure of the industry as a whole. So the next time you see real staff members begging fans to stop sending them death threats, remember, they're not the ones who broke One Punch Man. They were the only ones who tried to hold it together while the industry insisted on ripping it to shreds. Thanks for watching.
Find out before it's too late? Let's see. Ho, ho, ho! Welcome, young. In my last video, we covered the absolute units known as giant viruses, a collection of viruses so incomprehensibly large they were initially mistaken for bacteria. In this video, we're going to go to the opposite end of the spectrum. Instead of the largest viruses, we're starting with the smallest true viruses and going smaller and smaller until we reach the smallest virus-like entities we can find. Collectively, these things are called subviral infectious agents, but for the sake of this video, I only want to look at the agents that still contain a whisper of life. It'll make sense when we get there, trust me. What creeped me out about giant viruses is how uncannily similar they operate to cellular life. What freaks me out about subviral infectious agents is how they collectively feel corrupted. Corrupted like my edgy OC. Corrupted like data is corrupted. To draw a physics analogy, when we're talking about viruses and bacteria and yeast, I think of Newtonian physics. Push a block and it moves. Drop a ball and it falls. The rules make intuitive sense. But once you start slashing away features of pathogens, you reach another dark valley of reality. One where individual molecules themselves can still resemble some kind of degenerate version of life. Let's start with the porcine circovirus, the smallest, most simple true virus I could find. The porcine circovirus type 4 consists of just 2 genes. One gene that contains the instructions to make the capsid, or viral protein shell, and one gene that helps replicate its own circular stranded DNA genome. This really is the minimum number of genes a virus can have. This virus's entire shell is just repeating units of the same protein. Compare that to a medium-sized virus like adenovirus, and you can really get a sense for how pared down this virus actually is. There are other viruses in the porcine circovirus family, all of which share a similar genome structure. Some of these viruses have genes crammed into other genes, a very efficient way of packing a lot of useful information in a limited number of nucleotides. All of these viruses are capable of infection, but not all of them are capable of causing disease. And that got me wondering, what kind of disease could you actually have with such a simple structure? One of the diseases this virus causes is simply called porcine circovirus associated disease. Real clever, I know. This virus is extremely widespread amongst commercial flocks of pigs and can cause a general degradation in body condition, infecting lymphocytes, weakening the immune system, and opening the door to other infections. The most noteworthy of this family of viruses is PCV2. This virus has 11 genes crammed into its hyper-efficient genome, a bunch of which are doing things you would expect a virus to do: evade, attack, and destroy the immune system. But the crazy thing to me is, PCV4, the version of this virus with just 2 genes, is also capable of causing disease. This virus was discovered not too long ago. The mechanism by which it causes disease is still unknown. Maybe there are cryptic genes hiding even deeper within its genome. Maybe this simple protein code is doubling as an immune system killer. Maybe the DNA or the RNA that it produces has some kind of function, or can give rise to multiple products. Who knows what the future of this virus holds? Maybe one of you will crack this code. Next up, we have the satellite virus. This entry on the list is technically a functional virus, given the circumstances, but it's just missing a few things. Satellites devolved a dependency on other viruses. Maybe they're missing a component or two from their viral replication machinery. Maybe they're missing a component of their capsid. This dependent relationship with other viruses may or may not stifle the fitness of their helper virus. A satellite virus that infects a giant virus is given a special name, called a virophage. One of the most famous virophages around is the Sputnik virophage, named after the fact that they orbit larger viruses. The Sputnik virophage parasitizes the Mama virus, close relatives of the Mimi virus I talked about in my video about giant viruses. Sputnik alone does not contain all of the necessary instructions needed for its own viral replication. It relies on Mama virus for crucial replication machinery. Evolutionarily, this makes sense. Why code for your own machinery if you could just steal someone else's? This is kind of the mantra for any parasite. In a sort of way, viruses having their own biology hijacked by other viruses is a form of cosmic karma. While not all satellite viruses produce a penalty for their host, Sputnik co-infection was found to have decreased mama virus replication by 70% and reduces the lysis of their host, the amoeba, by 3-fold. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Satellite viruses don't just cause trouble for their helper viruses, they're also disruptive for human health. You've probably heard of viral hepatitis, a disease in which the liver is infected with at least one of several different viruses listed here. Except one of these viruses is a teensy bit less than a full virus. Hepatitis D is a satellite virus that relies on co-infection with its more well-known cousin, hepatitis B. But this satellite's a good bit weirder than Sputnik in my opinion. Hepatitis D doesn't code for its own envelope. Its replicating genome just appropriates Hep B's viral code, cosplaying as a completely different virus. It kind of screws my conception of what a virus identity even is. Since the coat is from a different virus, is Hep D just the genome inside? It's really weird to think about. So weird that depending on who you ask, Hep D might be better classified as a satellite nucleic acid instead. Hep D co-infection with Hep B is known as the most severe type of hepatitis infection. Hep D might not be a full virus on its own, but what it can contribute to pathology is the singular protein its genome encodes for. Let me repeat that. This satellite virus codes for one protein. This protein, called delta antigen, comes in two different flavors, a small form and a large form, caused by host enzymes replacing the stop codon on its RNA, extending the protein sequence by 19 amino acids. These two forms of the same protein are called isomers, and surprisingly enough, they have distinctly different functions for Hep D. But the reason why the host ultimately suffers for this is because this delta antigen is also immunogenic, meaning that when T cells, members of the adaptive immune system that can learn, recognize, and destroy pathogens, encounter this protein, they freak out and go on a rampage, destroying liver cells in their quest to vanquish this virus. Not only is the antigen immunogenic, it's also cytotoxic in its own right, a deadly combination for host cells. Remember, satellites are almost autonomously functioning viruses. The same cannot be said for our next category. By chopping off even more functionality, we get to our next category that I'm calling the glitches, starting with a literal defect, the defective interfering particle. These entities arise from mistakes made during the production of a virus. Because biology is just weird shapes bumping into one another, accidents at a molecular level can occur during replication. Polymerase, the class of enzymes responsible for nucleic acid replication, could just slip, and whoopsie daisies, a whole segment of the viral genome is just erased. What arises from faulty replication is a defective interfering genome, which, when it gets packed into a viral protein coat, becomes a defective interfering particle. Named as such because with a mangled genome, this thing can no longer be called a productive virus. It's broken. The first DIPs were discovered in influenza cultures back in the 1950s. I made a whole video on influenza, and in that video I made the claim that influenza's blazing fast replication speed and propensity for mutation makes it a disease control nightmare. Because influenza replicates so quickly, any mutations that would result in the production of a defective virus would be drowned out by the billions of copies of properly replicated viruses. But this turns out not to be totally accurate. On a species level, this is true. Influenza's replication rate can deal with its high mutation rate, but influenza isn't totally unaffected. These are defective interfering particles. They can accumulate and they can hamper influenza's ability to infect cells. Because their genomes have been shortened, they replicate much faster than the full-length virus. Hey, editing Phi here. DIPs do replicate faster than their correctly formed cousins, but attributing their replication rate to shorter genome size is an outdated concept. Faster replication is more likely to do with the shorter genomes accidentally generating stronger promoters, which makes them tastier targets for polymerases. And by replicating faster, they compete for protein shells and slow the ability for real viruses to be made. You would think that DIPs are another form of karmic justice, that evolving the high-risk, high-reward lifestyle of fast replication and mutation must surely come with some drawback. shortly, but this isn't necessarily the case either. DIPs are quite inconsistent and difficult to study. It's actually not entirely clear what DIPs do in naturally occurring infections. It has been observed that especially lethal strains of certain viruses appear to have mutated in a way that decreased the production of these DIPs, which makes a lot of sense. Fewer defective viruses mean a nastier, deadlier infection. But remember, the goal of all self-replicating
Would you look at that? There is actually an event I
Don't
almost
trust your
missed.
eyes on.
So annoying. Whatever. I guess I'm gonna have my stuff in the background while this quest is happening. Okay. Mute. Tell me everything. Just are the cutest.
Something out.
Oh, great. Thanks again for your help.
Okay. So deal with that. Pinches big. Mystic Nick. Next stage.
Entities is to persist, not to kill. This isn't Plague Inc. You don't win by killing off all of your hosts. DIP production is related to viral infections that persist, causing prolonged misery for the host, and continued survival for the virus, acting as a kind of tuning system for infection strength, a mediating thumb on the scale of homeostasis. If I had to guess, if DIPs were truly harmful for viral fitness, viruses wouldn't be making them in the first place. It makes sense to me that these glitch viruses have stayed in the through line of evolutionary history for their ability to ensure the continued existence of viruses. Bizarrely weird guardians of both viral survival and host survival. The next glitch entry is the viriform. The viriform is an endogenized viral element, meaning it is a virus that snuck its genome into the host chromosome. This is a pretty general concept and applies to a lot of virus biology. Most famously, human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV, is capable of inserting its own genome into the host cell, forcing that cell to create copies of HIV for the rest of that cell's life. But what if the hierarchy was flipped? What if instead of the virus hijacking the cell hijacked the virus? Viriforms happen when an endogenized virus has been co-opted by its host for an important function in the host's life cycle. This kind of thing happens so rarely that the viriform category was created just to make sense of the existence of one virus family in particular, the polydnaviruses. This group of viruses infects parasitic wasps and forms a mutually symbiotic relationship with them. This means that polydnaviruses get to permanently hang out in wasp cells, meaning as long as these parasitic wasps continue to survive, polydnavirus DNA will persist, completing the objective of life. Cells are generally not too fond of invading viruses, so in order for the penalty of virus infection to be offset, there must be some kind of trade-off. So what do polydnaviruses do for their wasp hosts? In exchange for permanent free room and board, the polydnaviruses will shut down the immune system of the caterpillar, the prey of their parasitic wasp hosts. Remember, viriforms are endogenized viral elements. Evolutionary time has degraded their identity as a true virus into something that is virus-like. Within the wasp ovary cells, this degraded virus begins to produce viral particles that pack useful viral products into neat little packages. Because the viriform itself is no longer a true virus, these packets are not true viruses, but simply containers carrying a paralyzing payload. Once the wasp injects its eggs and viral particles, the viral particles go to work suppressing the caterpillar immune system, enabling the wasp eggs to thrive within the caterpillar. Wasps that cannot make this viriform fail to inject viable eggs into the caterpillar, as the caterpillar immune system will eliminate the threat. I need to take a breather here. Polydnaviruses are evidence of a host taming a virus, and how cool is that? I know it can be a tempting trap to personify biology, but this is a YouTube channel, so get off my back. And my purpose is partially to engage your imagination. I can't help but wonder about the experience of viriformation. Some could say that the viriform is the idealized final form of a parasite, a true symbiote, a perfect merging of existence. An end to the eternal war between host and pathogen, a conclusion that so rarely ends with everlasting peace. But others could say that the viriform is an abomination, an abandoned organism stripped of its former identity, glitched code that endlessly attempts to copy itself, failing for all of eternity, screaming into the void of oblivion, and yet because its failure is exploitable, it will never be allowed to rest. Endogenous viral elements have their fingerprints all over biology. Famously, the primate gene syncytin was a viral element that was co-opted to regulate placental development. But because the syncytin gene doesn't produce viral particles, it doesn't get to count as a viriform. One quick shout out to genetic transfer agents, a type of viriform specific to bacteria. Much like polydnaviruses, these viral agents are incorporated into the bacterial chromosome, but their viral particles are used to carry random bits and pieces of host DNA into whatever bacteria are infected next. Because genetic transfer agents aren't true viruses, the infected hosts don't make new viruses, but instead can incorporate DNA from other bacteria in a kind of peer-to-peer file sharing system, yet another mechanism by which horizontal gene transfer happens. Before we continue, I do have to acknowledge, yes, prions are a type of subviral infectious particle. These special proteins take on a terrifying property when they're folded in the wrong way. They are capable of misfolding other prion proteins. Many of life's most horrifying diseases are propagated in this way, as piles and piles of misfolded hyperstable protein junk accumulates within neurons, killing them, leading to a slow, mostly inevitable decline. I won't go too deeply into prion science. I've already done a whole video on prions linked here, and not to toot my own horn, but I think it's pretty good, so go check it out. The reason why I put prions in the glitched biology category is that there's something very haunting about a bad protein corrupting other proteins, leading to an exponential accumulation of debilitating junk. While the prion is technically the smallest infectious agent, I don't put it last on this list for one simple reason. I want to keep this video about infectious agents that still have echoes of self-replicating life. And a prion, while it replicates via misfolding other proteins, it doesn't truly synthesize copies of itself. It simply causes other proteins to conform to its own will. We have finally reached the final category of subviral infectious agents. If viruses are the atoms of the living world, then these three agents are quarks, the absolute fundamental subdivisions of self-replicating life that we know of. But before we get into them, a super quick shout out to my YouTube membership. I believe all of my science content should be free on YouTube, but if you want my thoughts on non-science subjects or emojis to use during my educational live streams, please consider joining membership to keep this project going. Now, back to the final category of subviral infectious agents. The first agent we'll talk about in this segment is something I teased in my giant virus video. The obelisk. Named after the fact that this agent is nothing more than a single-stranded circular RNA molecule folded into an ominous rod shape. These agents were very recently discovered, their existence only becoming apparent last year. Since then, the biology world has been abuzz with curiosity surrounding these bizarre pieces of nucleic acids. So, what the heck even are obelisks? It's really hard to say. Their RNA genome is unlike any other organism we have sequences for, and again, from the giant virus video, this means that it is extremely tempting to put obelisks in their own special category of life. Obelisks do not code for their own viral coat, nor do they co-opt one from a helper virus. These are complete parasites that just require hosts for their own replication. They do encode for useful products, proteins called goblins. Wait, no, sorry, that's autocorrect. Proteins called oblins. 2 oblins have been discovered so far, Oblin 1 and Oblin 2. This discovery is so hot off the presses that we have no idea what it is these proteins actually do. Our go-to tool for generating hypotheses based off of homology, that is, an existing evolutionary relationship with an organism we do know about, doesn't work here, because again, obelisks are freaky little aliens. So the best guess scientists have for these oblins is a structural hypothesis. Oblin 1 looks like a globular protein and maybe binds RNA. Oblin 2 looks like a leucine zipper protein that could potentially act as a kind of protein domain adapter. Some obelisks can make ribozymes, which are RNA molecules with catalytic activity, often cleaving and replicating nucleic acids as a part of their own replication cycle, adding one more potential tool obelisks have to manipulate biology. There's kind of an issue with regards to finding these mysterious obelisks. They're not incredibly long, and since they don't appear to have an existing evolutionary relationship with other organisms, how do you know a piece of RNA is actually an obelisk? I'm not a smart enough cell to know the answer myself, but I did want to shout out this group for attempting to build an automated pipeline to find predicted obelisks, which they name the Tormentor. Oh my god, I just got that. Oh my god, you nerds. So what organism is parasitized by obelisks? It turns out, obelisks are everywhere. Attempting to build an automated pipeline to find predicted obelisks, which they name the Tormentor. Oh my god, I just got that. Oh my...
Obelisk the Tormentor. That's relation. That's a card.
My god, you nerds.
Divine Beast effect.
So what organism is parasitized by obelisks? It turns out, obelisks are everywhere. In the human microbiome, if you look for their faint signature, you can find them within Streptococcus sanguinis, a common resident of the human oral microbiome. Mammalian bacteria are not the only hosts for obelisks. They're also found in an environment we so rarely get to talk about on this channel, the ocean microbiome. Obelisks were found to be highly abundant in prokaryotes isolated from all temperate and tropical oceans in the world, as well as the Arctic samples isolated from the Terra expedition. And as of my current research, their impact on the biology of these systems are totally unknown. They're really weird to think about. Finally, we have viroids and virusoids, what I believe to be the absolute minimum units of infectivity. Okay, I'm gonna be real here. Virusoids were incredibly hard to place in this list. I chose to put them here because virusoids are kind of like a mishmash of other infectious agents we've already talked about so far. Virusoids are a specific type of single-stranded circular RNA satellite virus, very similar to the obelisk. Virusoids, unlike the obelisk, are encapsulated by proteins made by their helper virus. But unlike most satellite viruses, virusoids don't code for any protein. That's right, the hepatitis delta virus, coding for one singular protein, is still more complex than the virusoid, which codes for absolutely nothing. While virusoids don't code for protein, many of them still contain some kind of information that leads to the production of something catalytic. And that something is the ribozyme, that catalytic RNA molecule that obelisks also make, a potential throwback to the earliest days of life itself. Virusoids act as companion viruses to their helpers, exacerbating diseases that are especially relevant for commercial crops. How could a measly piece of RNA even cause disease? We're going to hold off on that line of questioning because the answer to this is also very similar to the final entity on this list called the viroid. Viroids are a lot like virusoids in that they are single-stranded circular RNA molecules that don't code for any protein, except unlike the virusoids, they don't even have a protein coat that they steal from helper viruses. Viroids are truly minimal units of self-replicating parasitism, floating molecules of RNA that can't code for protein, whose only function is to leech off of the host polymerase for successful replication. While most virusoids make something that is a functional ribozyme, half of viroids don't even make that. How bad could an RNA pathogen that doesn't even make protein even be? If you're an agriculturalist, these things could spell disaster. Viroids and virusoids are known plant pathogens. When a cell is loaded up with these pathogenic RNAs, these RNAs replicate, and after they're processed, either through their own ribozymes or host RNases, they form RNAs that can bind to host mRNA, which triggers their destruction through a mechanism called gene silencing. Remember, the central dogma states that information flows from DNA to mRNA to protein. Without mRNA, protein cannot be made. The direct result of this silencing is that important parts of the plant's protein production are simply shut down, and infected cells, as a result, become compromised. I'm about to wrap this video up, but please stick around for just a bit longer. I have an important channel announcement. On January 10th, starting at 9 AM EST, I'll be holding a 24-hour charity live stream to raise money for the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. I'll be talking about the science that you will directly fund, from basic mechanisms of breast cancer pathogenesis to research model development to drug design and more. Hours of research will be punctuated by more lighthearted segments featuring some very special guests. I started doing these charity marathons last year, and I can't wait to get back into the fray. We started this journey looking at viral titans, huge pathogens that dwarf some bacteria in size. And we will end with the smallest, most simple self-replicating pathogen, a humble strand of RNA whose only crime to the host cell is merely existing. Viroids bring to light something that I've always felt was amazing about biology. Self-replication imbues everything with a kind of lifelike property. Through natural selection and evolution, every self-replicating molecule is afforded a chance to survive, and only the luckiest, most tenacious molecules get to continue to be written about in the textbooks of biological history. Before we go to the credits, I need to acknowledge something about my giant virus video. I missed out on one particularly insane virus. Alpha pitheviruses are giant viruses that are disgustingly huge, bigger than even the Pandora virus. I missed this virus because, like, can you blame me? This thing's got like a total of 10 entries on Google Scholar, a very underground virus that eclipses even the mighty E. coli in size. Thank you, commenters, who have pointed this out to me. Thank you to all my members who continue to support this project. You are all rock stars. When I was just a little stem cell, my parents sent me to Korean math camp, which was located in a church. I am not Korean. And so I listened to sermons in a language I did not understand, learning the Bible through translations done by teenagers looking for some summer money, and I'd come to realize, as long as I believed in our Lord, He would protect me. So every night I prayed to the Holy Spirit and asked Him to protect me from rabies, because rabies is terrifying. If you thought that was an exaggeration, anytime you ask Reddit about their most feared disease, rabies is at the top of the list, and for good reason. Once symptoms start showing, you're dead in a matter of days to weeks. And basically, nothing in our kit of modern medicine can help. But it's not just the overwhelming odds of death, it's the fact that as a disease of the nervous system, rabies will break down the brain, causing you to lose yourself before physically dying. It's tragic, but I'm not here to talk about how horrible rabies is. You can look up that nightmare fuel yourself. I'm here to talk about why rabies is so hard for the immune system to kill. It starts with the virus's tropism, or the cell type the virus prefers to infect. Rabies infects neurons, and that's a big headache for the immune system. While the cells of the immune system are free to roam the body and stamp out infections as they see fit, they're usually not allowed to interact with the nervous system. Why is that? Neurons are like really important. You need them to move, to sense, to feel, to think, basic life-sustaining actions. And unlike so many other cells of the body, neurons can't replenish themselves after cell death. Why is that important? As good of a job as we do protecting the body, immune cells like us neutrophils often do our jobs with some level of collateral damage. And so neurons evolved to be a protected class of cells. They evolved to tune down their immune response so that we can't accidentally hurt them. How are nervous tissues protected if the immune system can't get in to fight germs that make it there? If we intercept threats before they make it to neurons, neurons can continue to do their job safely. When it comes to rabies, that strategy ultimately fails. Transmission of rabies happens through an animal bite, something that can penetrate and cut through layers of tissue and circulation that are supposed to stop viruses from getting to neurons. At this point, we still have time on our side. Rabies is fatal once it gets to the brain. If we stop it before it gets there, we might be able to survive. Neurons are the longest cell types in the body. If you got bit on the leg, the distance for the rabies virus to travel to your brain would be the distance for you to travel from Florida to Sweden. We have time, but not as much time as you would hope. Rabies evolved a dastardly technique that hijacks the cellular transport system by binding to the protein dynein. Dynein is a protein that usually transports useful cell cargo from the periphery of the cell towards its body. Rabies evolved to stick to this dynein and hitch a ride up the neurons towards the brain. And dynein is no slouch either. It might be small, but it can actually move at a blistering 800 nanometers per second. At this speed, it takes just 14 days for rabies to move up a meter-long neuron. Still not impressed? If dynein were human-sized, that'd be 212 miles per hour or 342 kilometers per hour for our non-freedom-loving audience. That's as fast as a bullet train or an arrow or like 8 Usain Bolts. What's implied here is the fact that the closer a rabid animal bites you to the brain, the less distance it has to travel before you're dead. That may explain the variance in the incubation period where rabies-infected peoples show no symptoms. Rabies races along neuronal tracks, setting up areas of concentrated viral production centers called negri bodies. These negri bodies act as viral factories, pumping out more copies of the rabies virus within neurons. It's embarrassing to admit as a neutrophil myself, but all of this viral setup happens without our knowledge or our interference. Like a child made to minimize their own psychological needs, neurons minimize their own distress signaling for the good of the body, even if they're in really bad shape. But not only are neurons already quiet signalers, the rabies virus inhibits neuronal interferon action, an immune signaler that would normally alert us to the site of infection. This double whammy of immune interference means that the infected neurons are nearly silent. There is one more desperate tool cells have when infected, and that is programmed cell death, or apoptosis. Apoptosis is the ultimate self-sacrifice. Through apoptosis, a cell undergoes a controlled demolition of itself, disintegrating into smaller bubbles, denying the virus further access to its virus-making machinery. These smaller bubbles can then be safely scooped up by cells of the immune system. But rabies may have evolved a way to take even this cellular nuclear option away from the neuron. Rabies strains that cause less apoptosis have been found to be more infectious in mice, implying that rabies could have evolved to stop apoptosis in its tracks. A fire burns for longer if you control its fuel source. Similarly, if rabies blew up neurons too early or too frequently, it might never make it to the brain without being cleaned up by the immune system. In a dastardly twist of fate, rabies evolved a way to protect neurons during incubation. What's that over the distance? Someone is approaching, and it's the killer T cell. Killer T cells may be small, but they pack a mean punch. We're saved. Infected cells display pieces of viral protein on their surface. When killer T cells recognize and bind that protein, they release a potent cocktail of enzymes that trigger cell death, like manual override for self-destruction. Even though rabies is holding down the neuron's ability to pop, the help from the killer T cells sends the death program over the edge. Is what I would say if rabies didn't have a Deus Ex Machina level cheat code. While rabies stops apoptosis in neurons, research has shown that it encourages apoptosis in T cells. How this happens is still being worked out, but it's so messed up. Here the T cell comes, attempting to save the day, only to be Uno reversed and blown up itself. All of this combined explains why rabies is an invisible death sentence. Not only can it be smuggled into the already quiet, vulnerable neurons, it evades detection by dampening their SOS signals. As neurons are being held hostage, they are even denied the grace of a righteous self-sacrifice. Even when immune cells locate and attempt to fight the rabies infection, it somehow turns the table on us. This buys time for rabies to make it all the way to the brain, breaking down a person's mind and control of their body. The cycle restarts as the virus makes its way to the salivary glands, allowing for transmission to begin again. By the way, did I mention the rabies virus only has 5 genes? 5 genes is all you need for a 100% mortality rate after the symptoms show, apparently. There is hope though. Rabies is min-maxed for stealth. If the immune system detects rabies before it gets to the brain, it's no longer a death sentence. A timely vaccine trains the immune system so that they can better recognize a rabies infection. But wait too long and it's over. So we're in a bad news, good news, bad news situation. Bad news, rabies is 100% lethal when symptoms appear. Good news, administration of a rabies vaccine soon after infection has a really high success rate in preventing death. Bad news, having rabies vaccine on hand is expensive, and having to deal with rabies at all is scary. Countries with robust healthcare funding can afford to routinely keep rabies levels in the wild low, but countries that can't have to be on their toes. It kinda sucks. But I hope by watching this video, you've gained an appreciation for how deep the evolutionary arms race goes. All these back and forth adaptations is what makes learning biology so thrilling. Do you have a favorite pathogen? Let me know in the comments and I'll look into it. See you next time.
Wow.
About the molecular biology of the plague, they said. Yersinia pestis would be cool, they said. Oh, hey YouTube, pardon the mess. I've just been a little lost in a mountain of research about the bacteria that brought about the Black Death, Yersinia pestis. What's that? I look tired? Remember when I talked about the rabies virus? I kind of missed that video, as the rabies virus only consists of like 5 genes. Yersinia pestis, however, dozens of virulence genes, at least. And here's the problem. I think a lot of them are actually really cool. So I kept writing and writing and writing, and before I knew it, this video's length has gotten way out of control. I originally wanted to do a whole thing about the history of the plague, but we don't have the time for that anymore. In this video, we're instead going to focus on the story of how Yersinia pestis evolved molecular tools to thoroughly crush the immune system. Here's the TLDR. Yersinia pestis is a coccobacillus whose primary host is the rat flea. It gives Yersinia pestis the dubious honor of being the rare hyperparasite. This bacteria is spread through liquid droplets and was thought to be responsible for a number of near world-ending pandemics, most famously the Black Death, which killed up to 50 million people in Europe in the 14th century. Depending on the route of transmission, the plague can take on different forms. Bubonic, which involves painful and fatal inflammation of lymph nodes, immune organs that act as the body's drainage system. Pneumonic plague involves invasion of lung tissue, causing deadly pneumonia. Septicemic plague involves infection of the very blood itself, and I don't think I have to elaborate on how bad that is. All forms of the plague are incredibly deadly, with mortality rates ranging from 30 to 100% if left untreated. The extreme nature of this pathogen has, of course, led to a lot of interest from viewers. Well, you've waited long enough. It's finally time to dive deep on the bringer of plague, the close combat specialist, Yersinia pestis.
Like a shadow. A little reward. Rest amidst the
Except
ice.
again, with how complicated this bacteria's story is, we can't even begin at the beginning. We have to rewind back to pestis's ancient ancestors, because a bacteria that manages to wipe out half of Europe doesn't just get spawned in after all. To fully appreciate how pestis works, we must first understand 3 fundamental things about the way it evolved. We must understand which molecular tools pestis inherited from its ancestral strain, which molecular tools it discarded, and which unique molecular assets pestis picked up during its evolution. Only by examining all 3 pieces of this story will we be able to fully appreciate the nature of Yersinia pestis's devastating infection. So grab a drink, hit the hype button if you've got it, and let's actually begin. Some millions of years ago, a hypothetical last common ancestor between all Yersinia species emerged. It's unclear whether this ancient ancestor was pathogenic or not, although the fact that most current Yersinia species today are actually environmental seems to suggest that the great ancestor was also environmental. It can be easy to forget that not all bacteria choose a life of parasitism. Parasitism is attractive because by parasitizing other species, you get to inherit the biology they worked so hard to build. A stable temperature, abundant resources, and wait, yeah, no, bodies don't let you just get away with this for free. So pathogens, of course, have to evolve a set of tools that will not only allow them to obtain the resources that they need from their hosts, but to also fend off host defenses and competition from other microbes. It's no wonder that so many bacteria prefer to hang out in the soil or in open ocean water. Moving forward in time, we have the last common ancestor of all human pathogenic Yersinia species, the shared ancestor between pestis, pseudotuberculosis, and enterocolitica. So what deadly tools did this common ancestor pick up for it to be the great-grandfather of the Black Death? Well, listen up. It picked up genes that allowed it to grow on vegetables. Wait, don't click off yet. I know that's kind of lame, sure, but did you know this ancestor also had genes that enabled it to survive the harsh environment of the mammalian gut? And that's kind of interesting, isn't it? The great-granddaddy of Pestis and all other human pathogenic Yersinia species started off as a gut pathogen, potentially spread from animal to animal through the consumption of contaminated food. This is a very different lifestyle than the one I outlined for Yersinia pestis, and makes Yersinia species look a lot more like another pathogen I talked about in my microbiome video, Helicobacter pylori. I find the context in which Pestis evolved to be mega interesting because not only was it the Black Death, it was also the black sheep of the Yersinia family, bypassing the gut entirely. But again, just because you can survive lettuce doesn't necessarily give you a free pass to infect a host. The last common ancestor between all pathogenic Yersinias picked up a crazy piece of DNA via horizontal gene transfer in the form of the first virulence plasmid we'll be talking about today, which I'm just going to call P-YOP. While we don't have all the details of how Yersinia picked this plasmid up, we do know a lot about what this plasmid does. This 70 kilobase plasmid encodes quite a few genes that are essential for Yersinia infection. It carries the very useful YAD-A gene, which improves the bacteria to bind to cells, enabling infection. This synergizes well with the invasin gene, a chromosomal gene that enables Yersinias to manipulate the host membranes to allow Yersinias to invite themselves in. But it's also got the blueprints for one of the most impressive feats of bacterial engineering to have ever emerged out of the primordial soup. The P-YOP plasmid codes for the type 3 secretion system, a genetic program that builds the injectosome, a key weapon Yersinias use to evade destruction by the immune system's first line of defense. Let's just take a second to marvel at this feat of bacterial engineering. Except just exporting a PNG off of Protein Databank won't do. No, sorry. No, we've got to enhance, zoom, blenderize. Blender, blender, blender. Why, oh why won't you render? Blender, blender, blender. Life was better before Blender. The injectosome is a massive, complex structure made from over 30 proteins that acts as a molecular syringe. This machine spans the double membranes of Yersinias, and when they make contact with their host cells, triggers the injection of Yersinia effector proteins, which is just a fancy name for proteins that do stuff in the host cell. The injectosome is the primary weapon Yersinia uses to fight the host's first line of defense, the phagocytes, which include neutrophils and macrophages. Taking a look at this impressive structure, are any of you biology students realizing something? Is there something somewhat familiar about how this protein looks? You might not recognize it immediately, but the type 3 secretion system shares a lot of similarity with bacterial flagella. Yes, the very same flagella that enables bacteria to swim in their environment. In fact, this secretion system is hypothesized to have diverged from bacterial flagella hundreds of millions of years ago. Once the injectosome connects the membranes of Yersinias and their hosts, we see the debut of the Squad. And by Squad, I mean the YOP effectors, a band of highly trained specialists evolved for a purpose: to pull off the grandest heist of them all, disabling the phagocytes of the innate immune system. Starting off, we've got YOP and the Gatekeeper protein. This cool-headed cucumber works in concert with other proteins to block the syringe from firing prematurely, ensuring efficient injection if and only if contact is made with the host cell. Once contact with the host membrane is established, this triggers a series of signals that causes the formation of a pore complex that actually connects the cytoplasm cytoplasm of Yersinia to their hosts. This has to be done in a very precise way, as opening holes in a cell, as you can imagine, is pretty dangerous. There are anti-pathogen peptides that are all about destabilizing membranes, and if you destabilize membranes too much, you could cause cells to rip apart in a process called lysis. If Yersinia's goal is to avoid destruction by phagocytes, why bother with such a precise tool? Why not just use this needle and pop these suckers? Lysis of a cell causes that cell to spill out all of its guts into the surrounding extracellular environment. These contents are often pro-inflammatory and will alert the immune system. If Yersinia wants to survive in a host, it can't risk being detected by the host immune system at large, especially early on in infection. No, brute force will not yield a preferable result. Only a surgically precise strike can ensure Yersinia's safety. Once the carefully constructed core complex is formed, the gate is then opened for the fearsome four, the quintessential quadruplets YOP-H, YOP-E, YOP-T, and YOP-O, who work together to disrupt the enzymes that are required for cytoskeletal stability and phagocytosis. Phagocytosis is a complex dance that certain immune cells like macrophages and neutrophils use to engulf and destroy bacteria. But mechanically, this process is governed by the coordinated assembly and disassembly of protein networks made of actin, whose structure and dynamics are reliant on certain enzymes. By disrupting the flow of actin, phagocytes become unable to move their membranes, and more importantly for Yersinia, unable to phagocytose. YOP-H even goes the extra mile, shutting down certain immune signaling pathways that stop the oxidative burst, a process that neutrophils and macrophages need to make the dangerous chemicals they use to destroy bacteria. If you want to learn more about neutrophils and the amazing oxidative burst, check out my spotlight on the neutrophils' tragic backstory. Link is in the on-screen annotation and in the video description. Yersinia's squad of proteins ultimately disarms phagocytes who encounter them and leaves them in a terrifying state of paralysis. While phagocytosis is a mighty anti-pathogenic defense, it is not the only weapon these white blood cells have. Even while completely paralyzed, these cells can still send out potent signals called cytokines that alert and empower other immune cells. Is what I would have said if it weren't for the effector protein YOP-J. YOP-J is an acetyltransferase, an enzyme that adds on acetyl groups to the amino acids serine, threonine, and lysine. Since biology is just weird shapes bumping into one another, adding a whole chemical group to the host enzymes is going to shut down a lot of biochemical pathways, including ones that enable a cell to make cytokines. As a last-ditch effort to call for backup, immune cells have one more ultimate ace: the inflammasome. If conventional ways of calling for backup are no longer an option, this desperate play involves using the potent signaling ability of the inflammasome to trigger the loudest programmed cell death there is: pyroptosis. This programmed form of cell death supercharges the cell's ability to pump out cytokines, perhaps even in the face of suppression. But if you've seen my other pathogen videos, you might expect Yersinias to have an answer for this, too. The mysterious YOP-M managed to evade understanding by scientists for a very long time. We knew it was important because mutating YOP-M would transform Yersinias in some contexts from pathogenic terrors to complete pushovers. But this protein, unlike the other YOPs, does not catalyze an enzymatic reaction, making it much harder to study. Several breakthroughs in Yersinia research reveal that while YOP-M itself does not have catalytic function, it can hijack certain host kinases to add a phosphate group to pyrin proteins. Pyrins are proteins that make up the inflammasome, and by keeping it phosphorylated, pyrins become unable to assemble. Paralyzed and with no way to call for help, what was supposed to be the first-line responders to infection instead become sitting ducks. As phagocytes lie there helpless, YOPJ triggers apoptosis, killing macrophages silently, a much more preferable outcome to the loud signals lysing cells produces. Apoptosis is a programmed form of cell death, one that can be healthy and normal under most circumstances. Apoptosis causes a cell to collapse into neat and separated membrane packets, trapping their inside guts and preventing unnecessary aggravation of the immune system. Yersinia takes advantage of this tidy cell death to stealthily move through the body uncontested. What I find so incredible about the YOP system is how carefully engineered this system appears to be. Through gradual refinement, each one of these proteins, for the most part, plays an essential role in Yersinia pathogenesis. Every protein has its function, and without this complex, coordinated heist, Yersinia would not be able to escape the wrath of the immune system. If you're enjoying learning about the complex molecular biology of the plague so far, consider joining membership. You get emojis to use during my live streams and access to non-science content. I believe all of my science content should be free for everybody, but your support really helps make that happen. Now, back to the plague. While the P-YOP plasmid makes pathogenic Yersinias a force to be reckoned with, not all pathogenic Yersinias are created equal. Enterocolitica branched off, doubling down on the last common ancestor's lifestyle, becoming very environmentally hardy and infecting the GI tract of an extremely wide variety of animal hosts. However, unlike its more dangerous cousins, Enterocolitica only produces extremely mild and self-limiting disease. An upset tummy that gets better on its own is a very different disease that essentially mauls you from the inside. And while pseudotuberculosis is nowhere near as deadly as its child pestis, it still causes severe illness in humans. The disease that this bacterium causes is called Far East Scarlet Light Fever, a much rarer infection that shares pathological features with tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is known to cause granulomas, tissue structures that emerge from the bodies and corpses of various immune cells, primarily the macrophage. But unlike its deadly namesake, pseudotuberculosis does not cause granulomas within the lung, but rather the spleen, the liver, and lymph nodes. Pseudotuberculosis' more hardcore infection could be attributed in part due to doubling down on hand-to-hand combat with its hunters. Enterocolitica is pretty happy with passing through the mammalian GI tract unbothered, and while relative pacifism worked out alright for Enterocolitica, pseudotuberculosis had carved out a path of violence, choosing instead to invade cells it didn't immediately destroy. Pseudotuberculosis developed several tools that more finely developed its hand-to-hand combat capabilities. These tools include resistance to cationic antimicrobial peptides, compounds that all sorts of cells make to suppress bacteria, special adherence proteins that improve sticking to macrophages and inhibit phagocytosis, and proteins that enable the bacteria to resist the toxic insides of macrophages. This is just my speculation, but it appears the last common ancestor between pseudotuberculosis and Enterocolitica had a choice. Treat the mammalian gut as a nice resort vacation, or try to make it a more permanent home. This doubling down on violence can be exemplified by Asian strains of pseudotuberculosis making the superantigen YPM, a toxin that drives T cells insane, contributing heavily to the severity of symptoms for the host. Pseudotuberculosis provided Yersinia pestis with an excellent scaffold design to evolve from, a canvas that evolution would paint a sinister shade of black. It was already a brutal bacteria with the ability to turn the tables on its innate immune cell hunters. So how did this already formidable foe become the record-breaking killer we know today? It's kind of hard to know how to tell this part of the story. We don't exactly have a neat timeline of when Yersinia pestis picked up and lost certain genes. So bear in mind that I will be, to a certain extent, narrativizing these genomic changes. I wasn't able to access the source for this particular claim, but there is a hypothesis that changes in the natural environment may have caused changes in the population or behavior of certain rodents. This may have triggered an increase in the frequency of contact between parasitic fleas and rodents. Fleas could have picked up pseudotuberculosis from infected rodents, exposing the bacteria to a brand new host environment. This model isn't exactly straightforward, as pseudotuberculosis is, again, a GI pathogen. If a rodent's got pseudotuberculosis in its blood, it's probably an unusually severe case of infection. But let's just say that this is true. Over time, repeated and consistent exposure to this new environment would select for beneficial traits that would enable Yersinia ancestors to be better suited for transmission in blood instead of through food. On a more macro level, Yersinia ancestors would have to evolve specific accommodations for its flea host as well. These evolutionary pressures to escape the GI tract and thrive in blood, as well as the esoteric changes made to better suit the flea, would give rise to the deadly plague. Yersinia pestis, having been flung repeatedly into a hostile, unfamiliar host environment, picked up a gift in the form of the PMT1 plasmid from its friendly neighbors. Where or who the donor was is a little unclear. At least one group thinks that based on similarities between this plasmid to plasmids found in other bacteria, Salmonella was potentially the culprit. Salmonella may have donated this plasmid to pseudotuberculosis while they were both cohabitating within the rodent gut. Over time, pseudotuberculosis would make this plasmid its own, and this may have truly kicked off the speciation event that gave rise to Yersinia pestis, something that happened shockingly recently on the scale of biological history. This plasmid's got a couple of nifty tools that enables pestis to make a happy home in the flea gut. The first gene we'll talk about here is the YMT gene, which codes for a phospholipase D that neutralizes toxic metabolic byproducts that the flea makes. Like any good tenant, Yersinia pestis evolved to care for its home. Pestis had its own urease gene pseudogenized, meaning a mutation in the gene for urease made the protein non-functional. Urease is toxic to fleas, and so breaking the gene that makes urease prevented pestis from poisoning its host. Pseudotuberculosis and Enterocolytica love making urease. It's crucial to maintain bacterial survival by balancing pH in the mammalian gut. But in the flea, all this does is ruin where they're squatting. It's not enough for pestis to simply tolerate the flea gut to become the plague bringer. Pestis has to complete the circuit and leave the flea to infect other animals. To do so, pestis must colonize the region of the flea closer to its mouth, the proventriculus region. Colonizing this area of the flea is not easy, and pestis can only do this through the production of a nasty biofilm. The regulator of capsule synthesis genes are genes that repress biofilm formation. Biofilms have come up time and time again in these pathogen videos, and for good reason. They're nifty matrices of proteins and sugars that can shield its inhabitants from the immune system, as well as coordinate pathogenic behaviors across a population of bacteria. Bacteria generally need robust control systems to only begin biofilm production when the situation calls for it, as synthesis of biofilms is a pretty resource-intensive process. Pseudotuberculosis generally keeps its biofilm production under tight scrutiny. Pseudotuberculosis is more invested in invading cells and spreading by exiting the GI tract. It doesn't really need to invest resources into making a static extracellular structure like a biofilm. Why have biofilm genes at all then? Biofilms enable pseudotuberculosis to shrug off environmental threats, which explains why pseudotuberculosis only makes biofilms at room temperature, a signal that the bacteria is outside of its mammalian host. Yersinia pestis, however, lost a key regulatory element in RCSA to pseudogenization. A 30 base pair duplication within the gene caused an insertion of 10 amino acids within the protein, destroying its anti-biofilm function. Without this break, Yersinia pestis would be better adapted to making biofilms in the flea. Imagine the RCS genes as being a checkpoint tuned for the environment. Once certain conditions are fulfilled, the block on biofilm production is lifted and these pathogens can begin getting entrenched. In the flea, the requirements to lift this block are never lifted, making colonization of the flea near impossible. It turns out that damaging this checkpoint system by breaking RCSA is actually a good thing for Yersinia pestis, as it allows them to successfully colonize the flea proventriculus, perhaps at the detriment to its ability to survive outside a living host. Once pestis successfully colonizes the proventriculus, biofilms begin to build up, resulting in a condition known as flea blockage. And here's a warning. What I'm about to explain is gross. There won't be any real explicit imagery, but you can use your imagination. Flea blockage literally causes the gut of the flea to be blocked off from properly receiving a blood meal. Once the flea starts feeding, blood passes through the proventriculus, carrying it with it a mass of biofilm and bacteria, which reasonably causes the flea to vomit, bringing with it a mass of biofilm and bacteria. Of course, the flea, having just vomited, failed to acquire nutrition, and so it tries voraciously to feed again. Rinse and repeat until you have a mess of Yersinia pestis deposited directly onto the open wound of whatever animal is unfortunate enough to have been bitten. This is the dominant explanation as to how Yersinia pestis spreads via flea bite, but it wouldn't be my channel if I didn't acknowledge that the truth is rather complicated. Blockage of the flea is detrimental to the survival of the flea itself, as the flea starves to death, and it isn't super clear whether blockage is adaptive or harmful for pestis's propagation. It is undeniable that blockage is a part of the story, but let's not give Yersinia too much credit for being molecularly clever here. Pseudotuberculosis and Enterocolitica both were motile bacteria, meaning they could move around. Swimming is a pretty good feature for bacteria. You can move towards food and shelter. But what good is moving towards food and shelter when you're wrapped up all nice and cozy in a biofilm with food being hand-delivered to you by circulating blood? Pestis pseudogenized much of its flagellar machinery. It just doesn't need it anymore now that it moves with the circulation of blood. But this loss of flagella had a devastating secondary effect, removing one of the common targets the innate immune system uses to detect and defeat bacteria. This is just one out of an ever-growing list of anti-innate immune system tools Pestis picked up, and it was only allowed to give up its flagella once it stopped relying on living and spreading through the GI tract. The flea catalyzed a series of gene gains and losses that took the game plan of pseudotuberculosis and turned it on its head, that transformed it from a bug confined to the GI tract to a bug that could infect and spread systemically, silently blowing up phagocytes along the way. But we're not even done there. Flea adaptations aren't the only thing that shaped Pestis's deadly nature. We now get to talk about the final virulence plasmid Yersinia picked up along its journey. The PPCP1 plasmid carries with it the PLA gene, coding for the protein plasminogen activator. This protein's role in Pestis infection is actually not super straightforward. It can break down the host's fibrin, which are protein networks that help trap and limit movement of bacteria, enabling Pestis to be freely carried through the blood unbothered. This has a side effect of slowing down neutrophils, as neutrophils rely heavily on fibrin networks to guide them towards infection. Under other circumstances, this protein is capable of catalyzing coagulation, which is kind of like the opposite of fibrinolysis, and I swear I do not have the synapse firing capacity to understand this right now. Subscribe if you want to hear more about all the other plague things I didn't get to in this video. So far, the genes that have been lost have all been pseudogenized, but this gene for acyltransferase LPXL was just lost entirely. This gene, along with the pseudogenized PAGP, helps the bacteria add the correct number of acyl groups to its membrane sugar LPS. In order to have a healthy and functioning membrane barrier, most bacteria need 6 acyl groups on these sugars. While this mutation would cripple most bacteria, in the very precise biological context Yersinia exists in, an acyltransferase mutation is well tolerated. This has an enormously lucky payout for Yersinia pestis. A tetraacylated LPS is highly unusual, and it loses its ability to bind TLR4, one of the premier pathogen-associated molecular pattern detectors the innate immune system relies on to combat infection. Not only is LPS broken in Pestis, but its surface antigens are also protected from recognition by the F1 capsular proteins, which shield Pestis from its immune cell hunters. This is the other gene on the PMT1 plasmid, and it codes for a fibrous shell that blocks phagocytosis, potentially by obscuring the surface area binding sites for its pathogen-associated molecular patterns, molecules the innate immune system can identify as harmful. While Pestis is effortlessly solo-killing phagocytes left and right, it still has to contend with how deadly blood itself can be. Circulating within the blood are components of the complement pathway. This immunology nightmare pathway results in the supercharging of the innate immune system, and one of the final results of this pathway is the assembly of the membrane attack complex, which opens huge holes in the bacterial membrane. Pestis's AL protein can jam the signaling required to initiate this program of cellular warfare. If you are keeping keeping track of how much time is left in this video, you might be wondering why I haven't talked at all about the adaptive immune system, the more modern and more powerful defense wing. The thing is, Yersinia pestis evolved to so thoroughly destroy the innate immune system with stealth, precision, and overwhelming force that by the time the adaptive immune system is ready to fight, the battle is already lost. With innate immunity silenced and destroyed, the adaptive immune system loses precious time to activate. The plague kills in a matter of days, about the same time the adaptive immune system needs to prepare for battle. I made this argument in my video about the tragic backstory of the neutrophil. The innate immune system is actually really good at its job. A bacteria like pestis makes us all look like chumps. But know that for the most part, if you remove even one of Pestis' virulence genes, the immune system cleans it up without a problem. Pestis exploded into history pretty recently, and mammalian biology just hasn't had the time to catch up. Thankfully, we don't have to. Modern pharmacology in the form of antibiotics like streptomycin and gentamicin, which shut down bacterial protein synthesis, can bring down the case fatality rate from a devastating 90 to 100% all the way down to the low number of 20%? Wait a second, that's still terrible. While horrifying diseases like rabies have excellent prognoses provided treatment has been initiated, While horrifying diseases like And wait a sec.
A little stiff. Time to move and loosen up.
Okay, that's still terrible. While horrifying diseases like rabies have excellent prognoses provided treatment has been initiated, current antibiotic treatment can only do so much for cases of pestis. Science is a bit behind the rest of the disease-fighting team, but this is where budding researchers like many in my audience can step up to bat. There are still many unanswered questions on how pestis functions in both mammals and in their flea hosts. Perhaps by uncovering more about how this bacteria functions, we can open up the surface area of attack for drug designers and vaccine manufacturers to put away the Reaper for good. Special shout out to Keko Gecko and Ray Napper for helping me with the Blender song. Shout out to Clockwork and Emil UX Lizard for helping me with learning.
Once the job's done, don't forget to leave me a 5-star rating on the customer satisfaction
The
form.
brain, a wrinkly mass of cells that sits protected in the ironclad fortress known as your skull. A mass of electric activity that coordinates the vast complex network that is the body, all in the effort to preserve the continuity that is your DNA. And buried deep within the brain are two almond-shaped complexes called the amygdala, the centers partly responsible for the experience of fear. In an environment of safety, people have been known to seek out experiences that trigger a fear response. I'm not entirely sure why, on an evolutionary scale, why people do it, why they would voluntarily press on that amygdala and put themselves in a position to fear. But when I looked at my YouTube comments, I came to understand that my audience is no exception. Prion proteins have a special property by which pathogenic variants of the protein can cause other non-pathogenic prions that the body naturally makes to misfold and aggregate. These toxic protein aggregates slowly build up in the neurons, leading to neurodegeneration and death. What makes prions so terrifying is that their aggregates cannot be cleared naturally by the body and are basically impossible to degrade enzymatically. Typical cooking temperatures were also insufficient to decontaminate affected beef, meaning cows infected with mad cow disease, a type of prion disease that has the capability of traversing the species barrier to infect humans, had to be incinerated. This biological agent is slow-acting, deadly, ultra-stable, ultra-persistent, and because it is unlike any other pathogen, no therapeutics for it exist. Those properties would be sufficient for the prion to reign as the king of nightmares, but on top of all of that, because misfolded prions cause healthy prions to misfold, they have the potential to grow exponentially. Prions are some of the scariest pathogenic agents I have ever seen. Some of you even believe that prions make classically horrifying pathogens like rabies virus look like amateurs. So here it is. This is almost everything I have ever learned about prions. Before we learn about prions, let's get on the same page when it comes to terminology. A prion is any protein that, when misfolded, can cause other proteins of the same type to misfold. But for clarity and simplicity's sake, when I talk about the prion protein, I am specifically referring to the protein product of the major prion protein gene. There are many prion proteins, but the one that will be relevant for most of our discussion of mammalian diseases is this major prion protein. And before we talk about prion diseases, we should first talk about what the major prion protein actually does in its healthy form. And that's a surprisingly difficult question to answer, involving a scientific roller coaster of seemingly contradictory results. Typically, when biologists want to study the function of a protein, they'll take a model organism and genetically modify the organism in a way that renders that protein non-functional. This is called a genetic knockout, an animal whose gene of interest has been disabled. We can then compare the biology of the knockout animal to the wild-type animal, or the animal that has not been genetically modified, and deduce the function of that gene. The first engineering of a major prion protein knockout in mammals were the Xeric-1 mice, made in 1992. How did the researchers break the prion protein gene in the Xeric-1 mice? Before the advent of CRISPR, a common strategy to break genes was to do a domain swap. What this involves is identifying the gene sequence of the protein of interest and taking advantage of a property of DNA called recombination that allows scientists to replace a huge chunk of the gene with some other DNA sequence, breaking that gene. The Xeric-1 mice no longer have a functional major prion protein gene because the majority of the prion gene was replaced with a neomycin resistance gene, producing a Frankenstein protein that should prevent real prion protein from being made. The neomycin resistance gene codes for an enzyme that confers resistance to the antibiotic neomycin and has no real function in neurons, making them a good candidate to break the prion protein without too many side effects. The researchers subjected these engineered mice to a battery of behavioral tests to check their cognitive functions through a series of mazes. What was shocking was that up to 7 months in age, these mice were largely normal, with no significant differences in their ability to learn. It seemed that the Xeric-1 mice lacking major prion protein being normal could lead one to believe that healthy prion protein has no major biological function. But hold on, scientists are nothing if not thorough. There are some interesting questions we can still ask given the results of the Xeric-1 study. 1. The whole of the prion protein was not removed. Maybe the little bit that was still being made still has a function, and not removing the whole protein wasn't drastic enough to cause a change. 2. Maybe the function of the prion protein is a function of old age. 7 months of age is safely an adult mouse, but it isn't geriatric. Many prion diseases take some time for symptoms to show. 3. Navigation of mazes is certainly a great test for assessing the cognitive, behavioral, and motor ability of a mouse, but maybe the prion protein is important for a somewhat complex/subtle change not captured by these tests. 4. Even if we didn't learn much about the prion protein's native function, we can still ask an interesting question about prion diseases. Prion disease is hypothesized to be propagated by misfolded prions forcing other prions to misfold. Do mice lacking the prion protein exhibit resistance to prion disease? I won't go into too many details on these particular experiments, but the short conclusion to this question is yes, the Xeric-1 mice lacking prions were resistant to infection by prions, supporting the hypothesis that prion diseases were in fact caused by prions. To address the first issue of the Xeric-1 mice potentially making some weirdly functional version of prion protein, a different group created another engineered strain, this time preventing the mouse from making prion mRNA or prion protein altogether. This line was called Edinburgh and replicated the results from the Xeric-1, showing that removing the prion protein did not have a measurable effect on developing mice. Not only was the Edinburgh mice less molecularly messy, the Edinburgh mouse also came from an inbred line, meaning there was less of a chance that the genetic engineering could have had unintended consequences. So that's it, right? Major prion protein has no major function in mammals. Knocking it out twice in 2 different mice lines showed no noticeable effects. Surely scientists would have moved on from this, but no. A third group made a mouse line called Nagasaki, which had the whole prion gene replaced with an antibiotic resistance gene. Their rationale for making this mouse was not apparent from their papers. Maybe they had trouble getting the existing mice or something, or maybe they took issue with how the previous mice were engineered. Whatever the case may be, unexpectedly, in contrast to Xeric-1 and Edinburgh, the Nagasaki mice in their old age experienced difficulty walking and had a a marked decrease in the number of Purkinje cells in their brain. Purkinje cells are special neurons found in the cerebellum, the cortex of the brain responsible for motor coordination. This presents us with some conflicting data. Zurich 1 and Edinburgh were largely normal. Nagasaki mice showed that prion protein might play a role in motor coordination. Why were the results different, and which one of these results should we believe? When the genetic engineering strategies were carefully compared, the Nagasaki mice were found to have removed a bit of extra DNA at the beginning of a protein coding region of the prion gene. This extra deletion was later shown to have major unintended consequences that resulted in the discovery of a secret hidden gene lurking in the shadow of the original prion gene. I'm pausing here to allow you to pick up the pieces of your surely shattered brain. This gene was called Doppel, for being the prion gene's doppelganger, and it lives 16 kilobases downstream of the prion gene. Doppel is an especially appropriate name as its sequence identity is so similar to the prion genes that it is hypothesized that Doppel and prion shared the same genetic ancestral origin. Show of hands how many of you prion freaks out there knew there was a prion doppelganger gene. I sure as heck didn't. It turns out that the extra bit of deletion that the Nagasaki mice had removed is what is called a splice acceptor site. We all know that DNA codes for mRNA, which is then read to make protein. But it is less known that mRNA is often processed in eukaryotes before it is made into protein. Eukaryotic mRNA is made of introns and exons, and before protein is produced, the introns are spliced out. Different combinations of splicing introns out can result in variations in protein structure, giving one stretch of DNA the ability to code for many different proteins. The prion protein is made of 3 exons that are read to make the protein, and these 2 introns here have to be cut out of the mRNA or the protein will be made incorrectly. These intronic sequences are removed through a process called splicing. In the healthy normal mouse, the prion gene and the Doppel gene make the mRNA for 2 different proteins, but by removing a splice site at the top of the prion gene sequence, the resulting production of the mRNA gets messed up, making a very long mRNA that includes the Doppel gene. In other words, the Nagasaki mice not only broke the prion protein, but also resulted in the production of way too much Doppel. Later research has confirmed that the overproduction of Doppel and not the removal of the prion protein was responsible for the Nagasaki mice losing coordination in their old age. And I think that's the raddest fucking shit I've ever seen. Progression in prion research has now allowed us some insight as to what the true cellular function of the prion protein is. It just wouldn't make sense for evolution to have conserved this gene across so many walks of life, in spite of its potential for biophysical corruption. If it were truly useless and truly just harmful, evolution would have likely jettisoned this gene from the genome long ago.
Now, little cuties, crush them!
We now know, after improved methods of research, that the prion protein is a membrane protein that is primarily made by neurons. We also know that the prion protein is significantly enriched at the axon and the presynaptic terminal. The axon is the long body of the neuron and acts as a relay for electrical signals to travel through. Synapses are junctions between neurons that allow one neuron to pass off signals to another. One could hypothesize that the prion protein is important for the structure and/or function of the synapse. While we discussed genetic knockouts as a way to investigate the role of genes, scientists can do the opposite. Overexpression lines are genetically engineered mice that make too much of a protein of interest. Mice that make too much healthy prion protein have increased synaptic transmission, meaning that the connections between neurons get stronger the more prion protein you have. But before you start taking prion supplements, just know that stronger neuronal connections don't always result in improved performance. Biology is about being just right for your context, meaning there is such a thing as neurons being too strongly connected. A hypothesized function of the prion protein is in the regulation of sleep. This certainly makes sense, given that prion disease fatal familial insomnia is a disease in which patients lose the ability to sleep. However, a direct link between prions and sleep has been difficult to prove and may be good to cover in a FIBIT. Prions might also play a role in mitigating neurotoxic damage. Ironically enough, mice without prion proteins have larger stroke volumes than mice that have prions. It's kind of weird. Finally, prions are hypothesized to play a role in myelin maintenance. Myelin sheaths are wraps of proteins and lipids that surround the body of the neuron to increase conduction speed of brain signals. Myelin sheath degradation is associated with all sorts of neurodegenerative diseases. To conclude this chapter, we can say that prions may play a subtle but important role in neurons. We might not need the protein to survive, but I think we're pretty sure we wouldn't be the same without making that protein. It's still a mystery why the prion protein has had such strong evolutionary pressure to be maintained in mammals, and I'm excited to hear what scientists have to say about it in the future. We now know a bit more about what prions actually do for us. Now we'll finally get into why you clicked on this video. Prion diseases. But since I'm not a medical doctor, nor do I want to inflict you with a neuroses about your health, I won't be talking about the diseases themselves, but the molecular biology behind how the diseases can manifest. Quick recap. Misfolded prions cause properly folded prions to misfold. Misfolded prions clump together in aggregates that the cell is not equipped to break up. Eventually the garbage gets out of control and the cell dies. How does a good prion misfold and turn bad? The details are somewhat fuzzy, but one way is that genetic mutations cause the amino acid sequence within proteins to change, and that slight structural change may make them far more vulnerable to being misfolded. We know that one end of the prion, called the N-terminus, is very disordered, meaning that part of the protein has a very high level of floppiness. The other end of the protein, called the C-terminus, is very structured, ordered, and relatively inflexible. Several mutations in the C-terminal end of the protein have been associated with the development of prion diseases, and those specific amino acids have been shown to be important for keeping those parts of the protein together. If any of these amino acid sequences change, say by spontaneous somatic mutation, the generally high-ordered C-terminal end of the protein can fall apart, allowing for messy, aggregation-prone configurations. This protein, whose sequence is now mutated, can now interact with healthy prion protein, forcing those proteins to misfold as well. If all prion diseases are caused by misfolding prions, why do these diseases have different symptoms? FFI starts with insomnia, CJD starts with dementia, Kuru starts with changes in motor ability. I might go into more depth in a 5-bit, but the short end of it is it's pretty mysterious, and might have to do with where those prions are aggregating. Why do cells die when dealing with prions? At least one mechanism by which prion aggregation causes cell death is by stressing the organelle known as the endoplasmic reticulum. Not only is the endoplasmic reticulum the hub for protein production in the cell, it's also the site in which these proteins are folded with the aid of proteins called chaperones. This quality control function of the ER is really important. It's estimated that 10% of healthy prion protein is initially made improperly folded. So the ER's job of correcting prion structure before it can be transported and poison other healthy prion proteins is, as you can imagine, of paramount importance. It is hypothesized that a buildup of misfolded prion protein in the ER, potentially induced by contact with an infectious prion, causes the ER to go into hyperdrive, upregulating the unfolded protein response. This program aims to hold onto misfolded proteins, unfold them, refold them, and send them on their merry way. Since misfolded prion proteins are so hard to unfold and refold, these toxic prions build up in the ER. Chronic activation of the unfolded protein response activates the p38-MAPK protein, initiating the cell death pathway known as apoptosis.
Rest in peace. Rest amidst the ice.
A reasonable assumption to make is that if we can figure out how to unfold a misfolded prion protein, or how to destroy them in a biologically relevant way, that a future in which these diseases are treatable is at the very least imaginable. So let's take a look at what I found about the structural biology of the prion protein. We know that misfolded prions are nigh impossible to destroy in a biological context, but why haven't we figured out a way to destroy them reliably? One reason why research into this problem is so tough is due to the inherent difficulties of studying the aggregated protein form. We've actually known the crystal structure of the healthy prion protein since 1996. Knowing what proteins actually look like on a molecular level is an incredible weapon for scientists to engineer solutions to these problems. We could, for instance, design something that maybe binds the healthy prion protein and prevents it from binding a diseased prion protein. But that would require understanding the origami steps by which contact with a misfolded prion causes a healthy prion to misfold. And that's difficult because it's really hard to find out what a misfolded prion even looks like. See, X-ray crystallography has been an incredible tool for molecular biology, the pinnacle of structural information. But its power comes with a drawback. As the name implies, you need your protein to form an actual crystal. As we learned in part 3 of this monster of a video, prions containing those specific amino acid changes have more disorder than their healthy counterparts, meaning getting them to form something like a crystal is really difficult. All hope is not lost for prion structural analysis, we just have to go a bit more low-res. Technologies like FTIR and CD spectroscopy can tell us a lot about the features of prion aggregates, namely that they are characterized by a shift from alpha helices to beta sheets. A paper using a technique called cryo-EM, which is an incredible technique with resolving power almost as good as X-ray crystallography without the drawbacks, was able to see the ultra-structural elements of a specific type of prion aggregate called a fibril, with proteins of their full length. Many prion structure studies had to cut off bits and pieces of the protein that were not amenable to crystallization. But this is the first I've seen where the whole length proteins giving rise to fibril aggregates were captured, and I gotta say, they are incredible. You can actually play with the models online, link in the description. Prion fibrils appear to involve stacks of these beta sheet heavy structures that have all of this surface area for interaction. Now, I'm not a structural biologist, but I hypothesize that one reason why these aggregates are so hard to break down with heat is that stacks and stacks of intermolecular forces combined makes molecules ultra stable. While understanding prion protein structure may hold the key to developing treatments for prion diseases, I was personally unable to find therapeutic strategies that took advantage of this new knowledge. Maybe in the future, scientists will develop a targeted molecule that can disrupt these interactions, but for now, my focus shifts elsewhere into currently, to my knowledge, there are no approved treatments for prion disease. There were many promising drug candidates in the past, but many trials have failed in the animal model stage. One such drug is quinaprine, a drug that started to work in mice, decreasing the amount of prion aggregates, but then failed as those prions had adapted a drug-resistant arrangement. My goodness, that is a scary sequence of words. Drug-resistant prion disease. I suppose since there aren't any drugs even out right now for prion diseases that it's not inherently worse, but still. Another cool attempt at a drug is the anti-prion AP1. The anti-prion is a prion whose aggregates do not appear to cause disease in mice. The idea here is that antiprions form their own aggregates that are resistant to disease-related folding patterns, effectively preventing disease-related prions from spreading their poison. When treated with AP1, mice still get accumulation of prion aggregates in their brain, but their brains are surprisingly normal, and they were resistant to developing clinical symptoms of prion disease. Insanely cool, but I haven't really seen a clinical trial come out of that technology. There is one promising ongoing clinical trial for an anti-prion drug, maybe the first ever. Ion 717 is an experimental drug that is an antisense oligonucleotide. What this basically means is that the drug is a piece of mRNA that binds prion mRNA. When those mRNA molecules bind to each other, they are destroyed, lowering the amount of prion protein that can be made in the brain that can be misfolded. This option could allow those who have prion aggregates building up in their brain to delay the progression of their disease. As we've seen early in the video, the prion protein does appear to have a function, but it doesn't seem to be required for life. In medicine, sometimes you have to make trade-offs. When faced with something as harrowing as a prion disease, side effects may be an acceptable risk to take. This was the perfect time to make this prion video, as the clinical trial started in 2024 and is predicted to end in 2025. If the folks at Ionis Medicine can pull this off, it would be an incredible victory for humanity. Let's hope that they do. While the folks at Ionis Medicine are in the middle of trials, it's not good to put all eggs in one basket. There is still research into basic prion biology, chemistry, and physics that are still going on. Perhaps we need to go deeper, more basic. Nope, too basic. Yeast are known to make different prion proteins all the time. Given they're not mammalian major prion protein, but they are proteins that do prion things. Evolution happens so much faster on the scale of microbes, and yet these organisms are still making a ton of different prion proteins. Why? In their non-aggregated form, many of these prion proteins have a healthy function. When they aggregate, it's actually really bad for the yeast. There is one notable exception, and it's crazy. It's the Het-S system. The Het-S aggregated prion, the form of the prion that is most associated with dysfunction, may actually help the yeast exchange DNA properly. Basically, if two yeast strains get a little funky and want to swap DNA, if they're of the same strain, then all good, go ahead. However, if one fungi makes a Het-S form that can form prion aggregates and the other doesn't, when the cells merge, the merged cell dies. When Het-S prion interacts with Het-S soluble, the Het-S soluble protein changes shape into a protein that destabilizes the cell membrane. Why might a fungi want that? These fungi often grow as colonies, a conglomerate of cells that cooperate with one another. An improper fusion between two incompatible cells may result in a functional enough but unhealthy cell. By having a system by which improper fusion events can be detected and removed, these fungi ensure a high level of evolutionary fitness in their environment. Functional prions. That's so cool. It makes sense, following the fact that fungi are prolific prion producers, that they evolved anti-prion defense systems, including chaperone proteins that help prions unfold and refold properly. Maybe a future therapy will take inspiration from the humble yeast. Another microorganism that surprisingly deals with prions are freaking lichens. Lichens are assemblages of fungi and algae. Out of seemingly nowhere, lichens have enzymes that are in fact capable of degrading prion aggregates. I had no idea there were any enzymes that could degrade prions, but the humble lichen apparently makes proteases that break down a wide range of prion variants, some down to 1/100th of their initial concentration. And that is an absolutely incredible thing to learn. One of the most absolutely horrifying scenarios you can think of is slowly accumulating prion aggregates in our food chain. But as far as I know, that hasn't happened yet. And why not? It's possible that microbes, like lichens, have evolved to break down the prion protein, preventing this apocalyptic scenario. But because the authors of this lichen prion review paper are cautious, I will echo their caution. I haven't read any proof about lichens being remediators of diseased prions in the environment, but boy, that would be awesome, wouldn't it? Prions have always been a dark fascination of mine, commonly thought to be one of the most terrifying biological agents to exist. But I didn't want to focus solely on what makes prions scary, because that covers the spotlight on all the incredible work that all the scientists that I've cited have done. If you like this video, subscribe for more deep dives into molecular biology. Thank you for watching. In 2013, researchers at Princeton and Columbia estimated that the average US person knows about 600 people. Meaning, all things being equal, if the devastating 1918 flu that blazed through 5% of the world's population were to happen today, the average US person would have known 30 people who passed due to its destructive power. That specter of humanity's past evolved to become one of the most dominant strains of seasonal flus we still have going around today. You know, the one that knocks you off your feet for a week, but is ultimately survivable. And while much of its sheer destructive power has been tempered with time, the seasonal, cutesy flu still kills up to 500,000 people a year, putting it on par with prevalent threats like malaria. As of the time of me writing this, the world scientists have been on edge with regards to one type of flu in particular, the H5N1 bird flu. Historic outbreaks of this flu have had a case fatality rate of around 50%, putting its lethal potential on par with the terrifying Ebola virus. I'm going to give you a brief overview of how influenza viruses work, taking you from the very basic molecular biology of how the flu virus operates all the way to understanding what makes the H5N1 virus so uniquely terrifying. And of course, we're going to dive into what some of the smartest scientists on the planet are doing to prevent this specter of our past from rising again. But before we get into the video, a word of caution. I can tell you how the flu virus works, but none of this is easily translatable to medical advice. Go to your doctor or trusted healthcare communicator for that info. With all that out of the way, let's begin. The problem with studying the flu virus is that the flu isn't just one virus. Influenza is a huge family of related viruses, not of all which have relevance for human health. The flu viruses we care about belong to the type A classification, and even within this nomenclature lies an awful litany of subclassifications. See, part of what makes the flu virus so terrifying is its ability to mutate, something that we'll talk much more about later in the video. Real life isn't Plague Inc. Mutations don't simultaneously update every virus of the same type all at once. Instead, at any given point of time, there are countless kaleidoscopes of local strains of the flu all extant at the exact same time, which is why researchers have adapted this particular nomenclature for each strain of the flu, a categorization that takes into account the locality of each virus. Notice how in this classification scheme that host species is not included. This is because many flu viruses are pretty casual about which host they infect. When the media called the 2009 influenza pandemic the swine flu, it wasn't because that flu only infected pigs, it's because an existing strain of human influenza happened to mix genetic material with the strain of pig influenza, giving the virus a new lease on life and a freshly minted license to kill. So if the influenza virus is in fact kind of casual about what animals it can infect, how come some flus seem to affect some animals worse than others? A major determinant of this virus's host species specificity has to do with this part of the classification system that describes the viral coat proteins. When scientists describe the flu, they usually shorthand this messy classification system with just this part, the H number and N number. These two letters describe the type of protein the flu exhibits on its viral coat. Our seasonal flu, our 1918 pandemic flu, and the 2009 swine flu are all separate substrains of the H1N1 virus, a flu virus making hemagglutinin type 1 and neuraminidase type 1. It follows then that the H5N1
it's going to be